Eric, will you please?
Okay, now you can. Thank you.
I'll be right back.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Jeff Salzer, Chair. We might get Tom. So I'm going to go ahead and elevate Erica to a voting member. And if Tom arrives, we'll do the same, but we have a quorum with the three of us.
I'd like to call this meeting, this joint public hearing with planning boards, the economic development portion to order. And we're going to do a roll call of members. If anyone is recording, you can announce so at this time. And it doesn't seem like anyone is recording, so we're good there. I will call on myself first. Councilor Garrett, I am in attendance. Councilor Bottomley. Here. Councilor Gordon is absent. Councilor Minhas.
Here.
Okay, and Councilor Dillamus.
Here.
Okay. So we have a quorum as well, and our meeting is now in order. I'm just gonna, do you mind if we have no minutes, so there's no need to approve them. And you have a comment on your agenda as well.
Sort of.
You just have a public hearing.
We'll do the public hearing and then, yeah, maybe, so what we'll do is we'll do the public hearing and then after that, if there's additional public comment, we'll take it then. Okay, the hearing. So just FYI for everyone.
Well, actually, I'm looking at my agenda. I have to call for public comment now. It's done the public hearing.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna, we are now in public comment. There's no one in person who wishes to make a public comment? Is there anybody who remotely would like to make public comment? And just to note, the public hearing will also have an opportunity to speak if you wish. But if you wish to speak now, by all means, just put your name and address into the chat.
None seen.
None seen, then we're going to close our public comment and I'll throw it back to Chair Salzer on the planning board.
Okay, and I'm just going to note that Tom Bledsoe is here, so as an alternate, and I'll elevate you to voting member because we have four folks. Erica's here.
My apologies. I found the meeting place at Zon Center quite dark. Yeah. I don't know why I got it in my head. It's over there.
But you made it.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's like this.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so next order of business for us is approval of meeting minutes. Yeah, you can sit up here, Tom.
No, well, public hearing.
So I was not at the meeting on April 15th, so I'm not going to have anything to say about that, but if others have comments about those few minutes, please share.
No comments from my point of view.
There's a copy of the minutes there too.
I've read them. Thank you. Good for me.
All right, in that case, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Discussion, all in favor? We need Erica to come back, because I'm not going to vote on this one. Two abstentions and two ayes, is that a positive?
Have you read the minutes?
Yeah, but I wasn't here, so I don't.
I know, but people say you can vote on it if you read them.
Okay,
I think you have to watch the meeting.
But watch it. Is that
Yeah,
do not do that.
I think so.
Okay.
maybe stalled?
I mean, yeah, let's wait for Erica to come back. Can I demote Erica to a non-voting member briefly? For this vote, re-elevate her?
I actually don't know how your alternate rules work at all, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Neither do we. Anyway. We have quite a number of us.
All right, we're gonna come back to the meeting minutes later and finish voting on those when we get the chance. So next update from the mayor's office, no topics to discuss there. So now we'll open a public hearing, joint public hearing of the EDC and the planning board on proposed zoning amendments to amend section 205.3 dimensional provisions and section 206.2 accessory uses and structures of the zoning ordinance. So is anyone in the public, anyone is here, do up to 3 minutes of public comment during the public hearing here? Do you need to open your hearing as well? Yeah, let's do that first.
Okay, so we're going to open up the EDC portion of the joint public hearing with the planning board, and it is 6:07 according to my clock. And I'm going to throw it back to Chair Sauer to give the directions to the public.
So now, open it up for public comment, 3 minutes each. Raise your hand online if you would like to speak. And I see Stephanie, so go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. I actually do not agree with the changes of the elimination of the Central Commercial District of having to meet the provisions and of the RA district. There are actual land laws that give abutters certain rights if they abut a central commercial or anything that carries use into their own district. So I don't agree with that elimination. And there is an effect to having almost complete by right use of our central commercial district for housing purposes. It takes into no consideration the effect on the economic viability of our downtown businesses as they completely do all of these projects. There's already enough laws and zoning changes to the central commercial district, allowing them to do certain things within that district that were trying to be changed by the correction of our zoning, which is, in my opinion, spot zoning. Also, I listened to the April 15th meeting, attended it and spoke at it. And David Singer was supposed to be at this meeting on May 7th. So I'm hoping that I can hear from him, as he was an invited person. And I was looking forward to hearing his expansion of what he was saying, but it wasn't on the agenda. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Anyone else have any public comment for the public hearing? Hearing none. I'll close the public comment. Do we do more with public hearings, or is that all we do? Okay,
There's nobody else.
I will close the public hearing at 6:09 PM for the planning board.
And I'm going to close the EDC portion of the public hearing at 6:09 as well.
You guys want to talk about adjourning or not adjourning?
Yeah, so our next meeting, the full EDC meeting where we will be discussing this proposed zoning change will be Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. The Economic Development Committee will not be discussing today. We'll be at 6:30 in the same room next week. And we are now to adjournment. So this is something we can discuss, folks. We can choose to adjourn now and just simply listen, or we can stay in session and sit at the table, although we're not part of the planning board. So they would have to recognize us as individuals to discuss with them if we wanted to. So I leave that up to the committee. Entirely your preference. If you guys want to stay here and potentially be part of the conversation, if there's room for us, or we can simply adjourn and be present in the room and listen to the discussion that way. So anybody that wants to offer an opinion on that, I am happy to hear it. Mr. Councilor
Can
Minos?
we ask questions if we adjourn?
We would. If you, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Then you're fine to adjourn. Okay, so let's take a vote.
I'm sorry, could you check on that?
What was that? Oh, actually, we can't talk to you. So,
If it's a rule, you should look that up.
yeah. So, we're gonna go ahead and do a vote to adjourn. And a chair of any committee can recognize anybody that they want to speak at any time. That's one of your authorities as chair. And I'm very confident of that role. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I'm going to go ahead and we can do this as a simple voice vote. We don't have anybody remote. So all in favor on the Economic Development Committee about adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the Economic Development Committee is adjourned at 6:11 PM. That may be the shortest meeting I have ever chaired. So congratulations, team. So at this point, we are done. I'm going to keep quiet, frankly, because I'm mostly just here to listen. But again, Councilman Minos,
And that's the next item on our agenda too, so don't have to stay too long if you want to stick around. So I guess real quick, let's vote. Erica, we did not vote on the approval of the meeting minutes when you stepped out. We didn't have enough people to vote on that. So do I have we had a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes. So it's all in favor? I abstain. All right, 3-0 to 1. Approved. All right, number 6, action item, consider the recommendation to city council of the proposed zoning amendments that we just talked about at a public hearing. All right, so does everyone have the language in front of them? Does anyone need a refresher on what this?
Yeah, I think it'd be good for the people in the online for us to understand the why and the wherefore of deleting the section that or the particular zone and what the change, the history behind why we're suggesting making this change. I think it'd be a good idea to review that.
Makes sense. Okay, so Ella prepared a memo that we saw back at a previous meeting, and she's offered to summarize what her suggestions were, what her take was on this. And I thought it was really helpful foundation. So Ella, why don't you do that, and then we can fill in additional details as needed.
Great, and if anyone is looking for the zoning amendment or other materials from the zoning code, it's in front of Councilor Minutes. So in recent years, the city has proactively passed zoning amendments to increase housing options downtown. These amendments have included allowing multifamily uses by right and allowing heights up to 80 feet in the CC district, the Central Commercial District. That's the zoning district that covers downtown. However, this section 200-5.3A or additional dimensional regulations of the zoning code remains an outlier and could be interpreted to mean that a multifamily use downtown would be limited to 35 feet in height and had to be set back 25 feet from the street. Fundamentally, this clause contradicts the city's primary goals related to promoting housing development, particularly in the downtown, as documented in the 2014 Master Plan, 2024 Greenfield Housing Plan, and the 2025 Master Plan Land Use Chapter Update. So the Planning Department recommends the Planning Board and EDC consider a zoning amendment. Section 200-5.3A currently reads, residences permitted in the CC, LC, GC, O, and GI districts must comply with the requirements of the RA district. And again, I have those dimensional requirements in the map there. That's straight just from the zoning code. To clarify what all these acronyms mean, the RA district is the zoning district that includes most of the residential neighborhoods of the city, south and east of 91. It's designed for relatively lower density residential neighborhoods with a maximum of 35 feet in height and a minimum of 25 feet in the front yards. That's between the street and whatever building. Requiring that all residential development comply with these RA dimensional requirements, both one, promotes auto-oriented low-density development in our downtown, and two, significantly reduces the viability of development downtown, residential development, and in other areas of the city. So the Planning Department recommends replacing all residences to just be 1-family, 2-family, and 3-family dwelling units. So that effectively means multifamily no longer needs to comply with this, and to strike downtown. So that it applies to other areas of the city, but not downtown. This zoning amendment would not change any existing development, nor 1-family, 2-family, or 3-family units. It would just enable multifamily residential development in downtown to be consistent with the existing fabric of downtown and along the main corridors, such as Federal Street. And then, based on discussion with the building commissioner about, as we reviewed for any potential unintended consequences and just being thorough regarding this amendment, the Planning Department recommends a concurrent amendment to section 200-6.2E fences to remove the reference to the front setback line, since the front setback line is now changing, and instead replace it with the intended dimensional requirements. Let's not refer to something that could change. Let's just say exactly we want what that fence, the dimensional requirements for the fences to be. So this ensures that fences are not constructed all the way to the sidewalk. 6-foot fences are not constructed all the way to the sidewalk on parcels that have front yards. And they also don't meet, they would start at the building rather than 25 feet from the street, which could be behind the building. That concludes my background. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
So the development that RDI is doing on Main Street, that's a multifamily already, right? And it does not meet the RA requirements at all. So my question is, that was permitted and allowed without the changes that we're recommending? And my question would be, how? If that was, if the original ordinance was that anything in the CC must comply with RA, how did that go through? I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just trying to understand in my mind the process. Because I agree with this. I mean, I think that something being built in a commercial district shouldn't have a 25-foot setback. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm just curious as to how the one on Main Street got passed without meeting that requirement.
It was not part of the review, so this needs to be understood as me assuming what happened. I don't know exactly what happened. My guess is this section was a vestige of older approach to zoning. It's not consistent with the recent amendments. And so it wasn't applied. But I'm not sure.
It was probably
Would that have been a,
not seen. I mean, everything now focused on the new changes. So we have sort of two competing parts of the code. One was more recently revised. So, and I think this, as you said, a vestige is just sort of sitting in there and no one realized that when you make these other changes, which you made, you should change this too.
no, I agree with that. I'm just curious as to how, if the original, like I said, the original zoning code was as written without the changes in here.
Yeah. How is
It
it?
says that CC required meet an RA district setback. How did it get approved? I assume was there a zoning board of appeal thing on it? No?
I think it just got through. It's in a different part of the zoning that maybe it's the first project like this in a while. This was put into place.
I'm agreeing with this.
And
So I'm not-
I'm trying to explain it. I'm not trying to make it. The reason I think it wasn't applied isn't because I think it just wasn't caught. It either wasn't caught or it was disregarded because it's somewhat subjective and it was determined that it's didn't apply. But again, I think I wasn't here at the time.
I think, I agree with the idea behind it, so I don't have any disagreement with it at all. I was just,
It does speak to just a weakness of zoning codes that are 170 pages long.
yeah,
We're always finding little things in there
I
that
think there's some.
The more you
contradictory zoning.
specify, the
Yeah.
more you
Yeah.
have to.
when things are referenced in 12 different places. So I think, one of the things we're just trying to do is clean, when we find these things, is clean them up,
Clean 'em up.
because otherwise you have these conflicts and confusions, and try to do it in the spirit of what, consistent with other amendments that have already gone through, the plans that have already been done, that everyone, make it consistent with what everyone thinks it allows.
I don't think this will change anything. It is in conformance with what people think the code is currently.
Yeah.
So this just puts it into conformance with what people believe the code is.
Codifies.
So it's not a change. It's like we have two conflicting and
Point
everybody.
of order,
assumes
I
that this
actually
one is
brought this
the-
up at prior meetings. This is part of what I complained in my complaint for the court
Stephanie,
case.
we heard your comment already, I'm sorry, and we got
No,
your
well,
email
if
as
you're
well.
gonna
I read
open
it.
it up to the city councilors that are sitting there
I can use my
listening to
discretion as to who I.
deliberation, then,
you-
then, then you're
Stephanie,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
allow the public to say there's a point of order. This has been brought up. Jeff, you're out of order.
Stephanie, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It
You
has
made your
been
comment
brought up.
before. I can choose.
Thank you, Victor, for bringing it up again. I brought that point up about some illegal stuff that was happening downtown. Thank you.
Lost my train of thought.
It was talking about just correcting the code.
Yes. Fine. Okay, so. Did you guys have any questions, clarification?
So from what I basically understand is that when you're looking at this sheet, it's contradictory, like the information on it. And essentially what this would do, essentially put us all on the same page. Because this is only saying, okay, RA can only go up to 35 feet, but then CC can go up to 80 feet, but then the original code says CC is part of RA, so then that
RA is
doesn't
part.
make sense.
Only so, yeah, exactly.
So to correct that, basically so essentially for the public, this would be nothing new. Like, it's not like, oh, it used to be 30 feet, now it's going up to 80 or anything like
That's
that.
fair.
It's like, we've agreed that it should be 80 and there's some like kind of like olden language in here that hasn't caught up to the rest of it.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Well said.
And the fence rules seems very specific, but we were talking to Mark Snow about this. Just, it can be good when you make a zoning change to make sure that there aren't any other unintended consequences. And the issue on that one is if we didn't make this change, you would suddenly, in certain circumstances, be able to build a fence up to 6 feet tall all the way to the lot line, up to the sidewalk. And it's his feeling that otherwise fences can only be 4 feet tall up to that line. So this basically makes it so you still have to go to the 4 foot until you go back to 25 feet, which was the old setback. So it's making sure that he believes that a 6 foot tall fence at the sidewalk is a safety hazard. You can't see around it for drivers, for pedestrians. So that just kind of cleans that up. And with his review, that was the only other weird unintended consequence that we wanted to avoid.
So that's in all sectors like CC, so it's in all of them, the fences.
Anywhere there's a fence.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is in a different section, just speaking to fences in general, yeah.
So if it's 6 feet, it has to be at least 25 feet away from.
Whatever the setback
side.
is on the property.
Yeah,
Whatever
usually you
that
line
zoning
it to the
setback is,
setback.
the fence, the tall fence has to stop at that setback.
Yep.
But you could still put a short fence, a
Yeah.
4 foot fence. You just can't put a 6 foot.
Okay.
But if the setback is close, it still has to be 25. Is that what this is saying now? The
It
actual,
doesn't matter, yeah, it disconnects it from the
Right.
setback. So that we don't get these weird things where people can suddenly do something.
it's just 25.
Right.
Thank you.
Planning board have any other thoughts or questions first, just quick clarifications and make sure we know what we're acting on here. Victor, do you feel like we've got the history?
No, good. I just,
I think I really appreciate you asking those questions. Very helpful. Okay, so the action option in front of us is to recommend to the city council that they make this change. If we could make that action today, EDC would do that next week, and then the subsequent council meeting, they would vote on it. It's the next one, right?
motion to make a favorable recommendation. Yeah, we acting on this?
Second.
Oh, if it's an action.
It is an action, item, yeah.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion that we send a favorable recommendation for the proposed zoning changes. Proposed amendments to section 200-5.3, additional dimension provisions, and section 200-6.2, accessory uses and structures of the Greenfield zoning orders.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, action item passes. You guys can still stay if you want, but we've been on to other stuff.
I'll migrate to the audience, so Mr. Singer has room when he comes and talks to you guys.
Okay, so now that the public hearing is passed,
Well, I got out of here, take his, this is the public hearing.
While we're shuffling,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, there are printed materials for planning board for all the items here.
great.
That one's left.
Okay, up here.
There's some spirit. Yeah, you just have it all, so, all the fingers and toes are there. All good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's you.
I-
Yeah, handouts as well?
I do,
Thank you.
one of each. I have the memo, but he's Are there any members who are fine?
No. Just above. No one, no members are online, we have people from the public.
Okay.
We have something to. I guess we can put this in the minutes.
Yeah, I have sent it to Ella this afternoon.
Everything.
Out of the limelight
In the back thing.
You're out of the limelight over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, how many? Oh, well,
We're handing out. You got that one.
catching that, Ella.
Oh, yeah.
Catching that, you know? Someone else would have at some point, and that would have created a whole lot of trouble. You know what I mean?
I'll ask, to the people on the phone, just because we have a few different items and they're all very different from each other. Is there anything in particular that, we didn't really do a public comment, we just did the public hearing, so if people want to comment on the other items on the agenda, we can do that at this time, or you can wait till your item comes up if you want to talk. I just know that there's other folks on the phone too that haven't commented yet. Or does anyone want to speak to any of the other items on the agenda? Yep, okay. All right, now on to discussion items. Continued item presentation by FERCog on strategies for Green River Corridor Management. Period.
Did you get these? Sorry? Did you get that? No.
Not this one. This one.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. So why don't you?
Sure. Again, for those who I didn't meet last time, I'm Andrea Donlin from the Franklin Regional Council of Governments. At the April 2nd meeting, I discussed and introduced the concept or reintroduced the concept of a river corridor along the Green River. FERCog mapped that corridor, or FERCog's consultant mapped that corridor back in 2019. And we now have a planning grant that would allow us to work with you if you wanted to make any zoning changes to incorporate the notion of protecting the river corridor in some way. I have 3 handouts. The first one is a response to some of the questions that came up at the last meeting. And one member asked about climate data, whether precipitation has increased.
The percentage increase.
And so the top graph is the yearly total annual precipitation for Franklin County. And there is a trend line that has gone up since the 1950s to now. The second figure shows that the frequency and severity of heavy precipitation events has increased in varying amounts across the country, but the Northeast has had a little bit more than other regions of the country. This isn't specific to Greenfield, but I hope that
70.
it partially responds to the question. Question 2 was, does the Green River corridor boundary include the area of land within the 500-year floodplain? Yes, it does. And I've included revised maps in this handout that shows in orange where the 500-year floodplain is. But just wanted to clarify that the methodology for mapping the corridor doesn't involve review of the flood maps. And I've included this summary of the procedures as another handout. I don't really want to go into this too much in detail. But at the last meeting,
you all got a paper version of the River Corridor Toolkit, and it's kind of hard to find this, but this thing is also in that. So I just thought it might be easier to find one page. Yeah, Emily. And,
Just 11%.
feel free to,
You drove a lot.
there's 3 handouts if you want to take like the clear copies.
Two, three.
I mean, the computer do that, but this is just not percent.
I know.
Doesn't put it at 50 to 11%. 6.
At 70 years.
You also have more job.
Okay, so question 3, folks were concerned, what would happen if we did consider an overlay district? Would that affect flood insurance rates or anything? And I did call a Greenfield Insurance Agency, and they said that really it's just enough flood insurance program data that they, or their computer stuff
The firm map.
looks at, yeah, so they plug in an address, pops up whether it's in or out. And it's flood insurance is separate from homeowners insurance, so a local bylaw wouldn't really come into play according to this person.
In or out of the flood zone.
Yeah. So any questions on these answers? And we can come back to them if they are relevant to the.
And you don't know when the last time USGS updated the maps for the Pioneer Valley, for example, do you know? Is that
FEMA?
Yeah, FEMA. I think USGS does it with FEMA.
Well,
Anyway, they
after
they have been
Irene,
updating them. I just didn't know if they did in our area.
yeah, USGS does do some river assessments after flooding,
Mhm.
and they did come around after Irene. They did a lot
did,
of
okay.
surveying in the area. And Emily from Franklin Land Trust is here, and she and I met with Nick Miller, who did the river corridor mapping. And he let us know that that did get used, even though it's not part of the methodology. There was some USGS, special USGS mapping going on while he was working on the river corridor mapping with LiDAR data and everything. And so that was something he was able to use and view.
And incorporate.
And incorporate, yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, I would rather have the information in there, given a
Mhm.
recent fairly catastrophic event for some people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, the maps are really useful to have. It's good to have them. And yes, it does have implications, but for people who are making decisions around real estate, important to know where they are, what the risks are.
Yeah, and so in terms of your question about FEMA, how often they update their maps, the answer is very rarely. The regulatory maps that are cited in your floodplain overlay district bylaw dates to 1980.
Right.
But they're in the process of
They are.
updating them right now. And there are some draft versions that each town and city has gotten to review. And these maps that I've included here show the new boundaries, not the old ones. So I wanted to just make clear that this light blue boundary that says 100-year floodplain is not exactly the boundary that is cited in your current zoning ordinance as a floodplain overlay district. And FERCog has produced maps that show the new and the old. And it's a pretty big file size, but Ella, you should have gotten that already, but I can actually, if you Google FERCog floodplain map, you will come to a home page that talks about this update and has a bunch of references, but there's a tab for each town that allows you to download the map for your city or town. So you can get that, any of you. But it's like 36 megabytes or something, so it's not like something I'm just gonna send in an email. Okay, so the meatier matter at hand is, whether or not to incorporate this concept or the river corridor into zoning ordinance in any way. And between the last meeting and this meeting, I came up with a few options that I wanted to just run through with you. And I guess we have a decent amount of funding to work on this up until June 30th, and then some smaller amount of funding to continue working on it till the end of the calendar year, if you want to explore this idea, any of these, yes. So I wanted to go through the options and then get kind of a read. It doesn't have to be official or whatever, but just like, are you interested in continuing to consider this or pursuing any of these options or putting it on the shelf or what? All right, well, the first option is to make no changes to the Greenfield zoning ordinance. This then would mean that the planning board or city planner or conservation agent could use the map river corridor as for guidance purposes. And when they meet with developers and landowners, they could verbally encourage projects to go outside of this boundary. We also have that draft river corridor guidance document that could be published and given to or made available on the city website to help keep people informed. But it wouldn't be any kind of regulatory boundary. So the pro side of that is you wouldn't have to do anything really. It's easy, it's not controversial, and it's possible that projects could be affected by just the talking over with planning staff or a board, but there's really no guarantee of protection of the river corridor. The downside of that is that it does leave the river corridor or parts of it susceptible to further development, particularly any pieces of land that are outside the 100-year floodplain, because Greenfield's floodplain overlay district already prevents encroachment into the floodway and prohibits certain kinds of projects in the floodplain, and then requires a special permit for encroachment into the floodplain. But so this reduces the likelihood of development, but it doesn't eliminate it altogether.
We're talking about is the difference between the blue and the black, where there is a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
One clarification, the riverfront area on the map, which is an offset from the river corridor, and then there's the floodplain.
Mm-hmm.
Does the floodplain district correspond to that 200-foot offset? It reads like it corresponds to the 100-year floodplain in the zoning.
The floodway.
The floodplain district F.
With zoning, current zoning.
The floodplain district F is the light blue area only.
Does
And
that
it's
include the green? Yeah.
The green is the Concom regulates that. So there's two different things, like land uses versus land.
So that's also regulated, but not by.
The riverfront area is 200-foot buffer, static buffer, regulated by the Concom. The floodplain overlay district is defined by the 100-year floodplain, and that's where a special permit is required
I see.
by the ZBA.
There's almost, I have a hard time maybe I just don't appreciate the difference enough between the 100-year floodplain, which already has a restrictive zoning overlay that applies to it, that adapts to future changes to the zone. Like the way this is written, if they change the flood map, the area covered by this floodplain district automatically updates. So already it almost is the exact same as the black line.
What do you mean it automatically updates?
The way that's written in the code, the floodplain district includes all special flood hazard areas designated on the city's flood insurance rate maps issued by FEMA for administration, blah, blah, blah. So it says that the floodplain district is the 100-year floodplain, I think. Not-
My read on it is that it specifically cites the 1980 maps, and so when this gets updated, you're gonna have to update it.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so it won't
The
automatically.
maps have not been updated.
Okay, so, but this is showing, is the map showing 1980?
The light blue you had mentioned earlier, Andrew, I think is what it will be.
What it will
updated to.
be, yep.
So the light blue is not the same as the 1980, so it wouldn't be exactly the same.
Do we know how different those are?
There is a map online that, you know, I don't know if I downloaded it onto I don't think I did, my laptop. But in some cases it's slightly bigger, in some cases it's slightly less.
We could just change the zoning to reference the new map when it comes out. For example, I'm just trying to.
You
understand-
can,
To say most
yep.
current map.
I would say that if you're allowed to have a line that moves without having to be, like, this is representing a specific line, I think. But you're right, that would be.
Yeah.
Ideal if that were possible.
Right, the most current map.
Chair,
Or we could be proactive
Jeff?
and
is there a topographical
Really
map on
before-
that packet? I can't see the packet. I don't know if it's uploaded. Could you let me know if it's uploaded?
I don't know. We'll put it with the minutes or we'll upload it after the meeting. We just got it ourselves.
Yeah, it was not provided publicly. What we are reviewing is the FERCog Green River Corridor map, which is publicly available on FERCog.
Is that the draft maps that are in the planning documents on the city website, or do I have to go direct? Because I already submitted all those maps to the city, so I just wanted to know where they're located now in the city. I thought they were on the planning, like under draft documents and recommendations from like FERCog.
Not sure what you're referring to.
I'm with you, Jeff. I think we've got enough. But the 100-year, if it's already an established thing, it's what the insurance is based on. People can look it up if they want to develop. I don't like the fact restricting development. That's the phrase that's been used here. And I just don't like that idea. I mean, the floodplain is the floodplain. People can look at that. They can decide whether they want to make the risk or the investment based on the floodplain. Why do we need to draw another arbitrary line? Like you said, this could change. And we've got to change this corridor map again and all that. We've got something in place already that regulates development. I don't know why we need to add another layer of regulation.
I'm going to offer a different take.
Go ahead.
Having done a lot of post-disaster assessment work around the country and in other parts of the world. And also having looked at the climate trends with increased higher intensity storms rather than spread out, we're increasing in intensity. The time in between storms is reducing, but the intensity is increasing. So I'm of the persuasion that wherever possible, we should err on the side of caution and indicate, yeah, ideally this is where it should be. And yes, all these areas here are in flood zones. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. And the trouble is when it does happen, the whole community pays, including the people there. And I really believe in being more proactive. And I would say that black line is our line. That's my take on it. Just because it's so hard to recover from these
I
things.
think just for clarity, if you're in the blue line, I mean, drawing another line on top of the blue line in the same location that's already a restricted area. So those areas are already Like, how much, maybe Andrew, you should just,
It's just the difference between the blue and the black, which I would be interested in knowing, is there any land here that we're particularly concerned about that could be developed that we may not want to see developed? You know, are there parcels here that are of concern? Because a lot of it just hugs the thing perfectly and we're not going to get anything.
Right.
It feels like up north at the tip here, there's a fair amount that's outside.
Mhm.
And I don't know where else, and if there is any other place. So it'd just be helpful to know, are there areas that are at risk that we're concerned about?
So
Well, we
the,
are working on a GIS analysis of that question. How many, how much acreage, how many buildings, that kind of thing are outside of the 100-year floodplain, but inside the river corridor.
Yep.
Let me just clarify that the river corridor will not change over time, but the floodplain does change over time. The river corridor represents the area that our fluvial geomorphologists determined to be basically in harm's way at some point over the course of history. So the goal of regulating it in some way would be to avoid this kind of disaster conflict, that we wouldn't want to put roads, buildings and stuff in a place that will that pose some risk to getting wrecked. And also, the more you encroach on this area upstream, the likelihood you would make things worse downstream. And because most of the area that doesn't overlap with the 100-year floodplain is upstream, it potentially would, developing in this area potentially would make river velocity and river flooding worse in this downtown section, which would, cause probably more expensive fixes.
Do you have any kind of idea what you talk about when say developing in this area? This is a rural community. If we were lucky to get a small subdivision in there, we'd be happy. How much impact is a small subdivision going to have? Like, let's take the one right here in the corner here over in Lunt Drive. Let's say you put Lunt Drive right up here where this orange one is. Do we have any idea what kind of impact that's going to have on it? Because most of them are lots. It's got very few coverage and permeable surface from what I can see. So does anyone know if you put that there, what kind of impact it would have had? But you're making it sound like if we build anything there, downtown's going to flood. Okay, and I don't quite believe that. So I'd like to know if there's some kind of information, empirical data or information that says you would need to cover 55% of that area with impervious surface to have any impact on the river at all. To just say, let's not develop it because it might affect the downtown, doesn't have enough data for me to say, yeah, that's a good idea. So I'd like to know some more about that. If you can come up with something that says this area that's outside the floodplain, but inside your corridor, how much of it would need to be, I'm assuming it needs to be impervious to really have any impact. I could be wrong. I'm not a geologist.
no, that's.
But, how much would we need to be covered to have any significant impact on the rest of the river?
A lot of drops make a glass of water.
Well,
Erica, I'm not disagreeing.
No, I know, but I'm just
You know,
saying that's,
if I build my house there, I'm not going to
It's-
affect downtown.
it's, no,
Okay,
but
so-
I
So
mean,
let's have data
it's-
to make
it's a lot
this,
of-
but let's
yeah.
let's have
Yeah.
data to make intelligent decisions. We're acting emotional.
Mhm.
Let's not act emotional. Let's get data.
The point that I wanted to follow up with to my comment before is if you identify this corridor, then you can, as part of the master plan, and I think it is somewhere in our master plan, but that strategically the city can say, you know what? We know this is high risk areas and we're little by little going to try and find ways to acquire these properties when they're going to change hands. And we're going to turn it into a river corridor for recreation or whatever, but at the same time, it's for the sustainability of the city in flood prone periods of time. So identifying allows that second step to happen, I think, more easily. have in place a plan for acquisition, just like we acquire farmland, or we put in protection, different areas. We could be doing the same thing with the corridor if it's
But
identified.
they're already in the flood. So they're already identified.
So, I think Nick Miller was saying that one example is that an acre of wetland absorbs 1 million gallons of water. So for every subdivision or paving that affects wetlands of some sort, you are going to add that much more water downstream. I don't have a model that would show exactly if you put something here, what would happen downstream, but the basic idea of this river corridor is that it is based on science, that when watersheds are paved over or encroached upon, it does have effects downstream. And so does straightening a river, We've had a huge history of manipulating rivers, and, it's added to our problems, but it's done other things for us as well.
Can I just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
My understanding of this, the goal of this, the way the language reads, we're protecting the river. The analysis identified where the river wants to go. And this is to make way for the river. So over the course of centuries and millennia, it can weave around in that path. I do not think that is related to runoff. I don't think this is a runoff rule. And I don't think it's an ecological rule. It's a geological rule. If you build a bunch of houses right there, the water is you're really close to, I'm pointing to this ridge line. All that runoff is going to go right into the river too. From a river volume standpoint, I think that's not the point of this rule. And I don't think that that's what we're trying to solve for. We're just trying to make sure that if the river changed course, we're allowing it to. And then, as it happens, the more you lay off the river, the less likely. I mean, I agree that the more room the river has, potentially the less flooding could happen downstream. But I just don't think that's actually what this is trying to accomplish. And the floodplain already does that. And that's the purpose of the floodplain. It's also the purpose of the riverfront overlay district. And then also, Erica, to your point about, we don't need to change the zoning to recognize that a property in harm's way should be not developed. But what would happen is if you made the zoning such that you can't do anything in that area, you might devalue its property, make it a lot easier for the city to take it because you just made it. I mean, that doesn't feel like the right thing to do either. If you're going to acquire properties, you should pay fair market value, not devalue them through a zoning change and then pay pennies on the dollar when they're not buildable anymore.
Well, technically, if you're looking at a property and you're doing a wetland survey, most of these, because of the soils and the plants that grow there, it's gonna come up as wetlands. But
Then you don't need
a
the zoning
lot of
to-
people don't do that work on their site if they're not required to by planning or zoning regulations. They're not gonna do it.
But this isn't talking about wetlands, I don't think.
No, but my point is this corridor, I can fairly assuredly say that this corridor, if you go and check the soils there and look at the vegetation, it's going to show wetland type species of plants, which then puts you in a wetland zone.
Then we should
Identify it as a well.
Right.
Is that what we're trying to solve for? We should have a rule about wetlands.
Which creates the same thing that you can't build in that zone, my point being.
But we don't need an indirect way to regulate that if we can measure it and just have a wetlands rule.
Right.
That's my whole point. I think I made enough
Right.
sense.
Okay, so wait,
That makes it easy. No,
this document is about options. And so the first option I said is to do nothing. So let's go through the other options and, so that's what you're arguing for, and that's fine. You can definitely decide to go that way. My only point is that the pros and cons, the cons are that, potentially things would get built in this area that are in harm's way. The second option is to do the river corridor overlay district, which is what I discussed last time. And there are a variety of ways you could approach this, and not all of them are preventing anything from happening and devaluing the property. So in one you would have to make decisions about what is and what isn't allowed. There are lots of different options. And there also was some interest in potentially splitting the river corridor into some way, like upstream of I-91, downstream. You could have within the 100-year floodplain, outside the 100-year floodplain, or some other kind of split. If you did want to go this route, the methodology explains that a 50-foot buffer is added to the hazard corridor to capture steep valley sides that might destabilize. But in the case of like Deerfield Street, there's that wall.
Is this
Behind it.
back
What?
in that 50-foot buffer?
Yes, it does. And so you'll see that some parts of Washington Street are kind of in the river corridor, and you could decide like, that's not going to happen, and it really restricts people on Washington Street. There's a concrete wall that's probably not going to cave in during a flood. So, you could say things are not restricted within 50 feet of the boundary. You could say you could petition the planning board not to count that part of the property or whatever. There's like tons of different options that you could choose if you wanted to go this route, although it sounds like you're not inclined at the moment. So the pro of this, or the good side of it, is that it would codify the river corridor in some way in the zoning ordinance. And it would be a straightforward and effective method for protecting the corridor through zoning. Protecting and managing river corridors do improve ecological function. They limit downstream flooding and sediment loading, protects infrastructure from fluvial erosion and flooding, and increases resiliency. Boundaries would be defined. There'd be a method for proving or disproving whether project lies inside or outside the corridor, and all of that would be articulated in the ordinance. The downside is, as you've said, property owners could be very concerned about what they could do on their property, so that might be difficult, and there'd be a need to be a lot of educating the public about why this is a good idea long term. So that's that option. The other option would be to incorporate the concept of a river corridor in your special permit or site plan review provisions. This is number 3 on pages 2 and 3. I have copied the relevant sections of your special permit provision, section 200-8.3. And the stuff that's underlined is what the kind of language that could be written into that section. Section B is a site plan review. Part of the way it reads now and what you could, the kind of thing that you could add. These would be a good first step. And they're relatively simple. It would cover any project that already needs a special permit or a site plan review, which under your floodplain overlay district, everything in the floodplain would need a special permit. But the other things that need site plan review are business, commercial, industrial, uses, or any subdivision of 3 or more units. So if somebody was proposing to put in a, what is this, Lunt Drive thing right in there, it would get us, if it was proposed over here where the parts of it aren't in the floodplain, it needs a site plan review, and if you added this to your site plan review provision, the developer would have to demonstrate measures to minimize the being built in the river corridor.
8.3 would be special permit and 8.4 would be site plan review.
Yeah. The downside is it doesn't really avoid development, but it does encourage it in a more formal way than the informal of the city planner meeting with the developer and just encouraging them. You would have to adopt the river corridor map into your zoning ordinance in some way. Official. Downside.
There's a fourth option. So one thing that this provides is lots of, I think, you have more time to work on this too.
Yep.
But maybe a path of less resistance could be to take the best practice guidelines that this includes or could include about how to build in the corridor, because we're not saying you can't build in the corridor. You're suggesting you can, you just need to do it in a certain way, right?
No, I'm saying, the way it's potentially drafted is that measures were taken to locate structures, roadways, infrastructure outside of the boundary of the river corridor. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so you can or cannot build. If we pass the, I guess I'll just skip to my point is we have the river floodplain district. It's not the same geometry. It's not as inclusive as the river corridor,
Yeah,
but it is an existing district that has a lot of restrictions in it already.
yes.
So one option could be to take all of the good ideas about how to build better in the river corridor and just apply it to the district we already have that's almost the same. And not change the map, just change the code. Not put it in site plan review or special permit review, put it directly in the description of the district. Because if people are building in the floodplain district, I think we'd like them to take all those measures, and
Right.
I don't want to not get a bunch of good ideas,
So,
baby out with the bathwater situation where just because we don't want to change the zoning map, we now don't get the benefit of having all these other good ideas that we might agree with, kind of in a more case by case basis.
What good ideas are you referring to?
We would ask you to come up with as many good ideas as you can before June 30th, and then we would pick ones to put into the zoning.
well, it's like the requirements that people now have for oceanfront properties. They've got to raise them on stilts, or in flood zones, they've got to raise them up in many parts of the country now. That's an example.
Exactly.
Or like
That's
California,
already
fire
required in
resistance.
your
I mean, there are different ways, and we have cities on top of rivers that we're not moving those cities. We're not going to be moving those things. So there are certain things you can do, but I still go back to the point that if we have this corridor that serves many things, it's also good to have another option of land, just like we did the old trailer park. FEMA gave a grant to the city to purchase that land, and now it's part of the corridor and it's protected, and it's a buffer that everybody benefits from.
Yeah.
So I think having multiple mechanisms, options and ways, because we're not going to move the city. The river's not going away. It's only going to get wider. Maybe we do a multi-pronged approach. And, because even though this information is out there, there's still going to be somebody who's going to come along and buy this house, think they're so lucky they got a great deal, and they've got this beautiful waterfront property, and then there's a disaster, and I didn't know. It's the famous last words. I didn't know. Nobody told me. So
Is that what we're focused on, is houses that already exist that someone needs to be educated about? Or this is about things that don't exist that we may or may not want to happen and have happen?
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it strikes me. So
okay.
these examples don't feel as relevant.
To the latter example, yeah, you're right. It doesn't
Yeah.
apply.
This is more, are there places that are outside of the 100-year line that we think are at risk of being developed that we're concerned about? And how much of that? And I really have not yet got, it's obviously not a lot because there's most of it's inside the line. So there's only a couple of areas, and I'm still having a hard time sensing whether, is this really developable property that could be developed that we are concerned about, that we should fix it? Or are we pretty much good? And as you say, Jeff, if there's some good practices, let's try to bring them into are pretty good situation. So I can't figure out, do we have a problem, you know?
I'd love to take a stab at talking about the northern part of the mapping and some of the elements that you might have touched on, but maybe haven't been. So when you look at the northern river corridor area, you see the green and the blue within it. And one of the differences that I think we were talking about before was that the floodplain will shift within the larger river corridor area. So we can, over time, with storms, with, you know, normal erosion, that the river will move around. Right now, in this area, it's a real contrast from the south area where it's incredibly
There's
constricted.
nowhere to move. Yeah.
So many buildings. We're really in the place where it's already developed. We're just dealing with the impacts. And this area up here is this incredible opportunity to reduce the impacts set further south. And one of the things that may not be obvious is that this river is still fairly straight in a lot of the length of it. Up, and especially the furthest northern part, there's a little bit of a meander, but not very much. If we look at the river as a dynamic part of the landscape within the black lines, there's a tremendous amount of area for it to meander more, so that it could become much more like the middle section where there's a lot of wiggles there. Every time it meanders like that, if it doesn't have something that it's coming into conflict with, it's slowing down a lot. So there's a couple of different elements here. There's the flood storage that is every acre that's not developed, like you were talking about. And then there's the actual structure of the river and its ability to, when we talk about adjusting, we mean slowing and becoming more sinuous and moving around.
Meandering is good.
Meandering is really good because then it's slowing down. It's like when you come down a mountain and you go on switchbacks. That's basically what the river's doing. It's slowing down instead of coming careening straight down. And the faster it comes, the more damage we get here when the flood comes in. So that's one of the elements of really looking at the corridor instead of the floodplain. The floodplain, you're just looking at where the river right now is, and the corridor is looking at the extent that it could be and being able to take advantage of all of that room to be able to reduce impacts further down.
Two questions. One is, at what time scale does it meander? And two, if it meanders, it's still wiggly. Unless what you're saying is if you build, that edge will become hard and it won't be able, that'll increase the velocity of the river.
Yeah, exactly. So bridges, for example, when you put a bridge over a river, then it creates constriction.
From that point
and makes it flow
forward.
faster.
Okay, that makes sense. At what
Yeah.
time scale does it meander?
It meanders basically over, it could happen tomorrow based on a flood, or it could go over 100 years. So it's a constantly dynamic process. There are different elements that can affect that. If we're building next to it, then it can't adjust. So we're keeping it from doing that. Or we can actually work with the river and do river restoration, which could either use natural materials to deflect away from existing buildings or encourage the river to adjust and to do more of its natural dynamic change. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, we want to go jump in there tomorrow and make it more wiggly, but we absolutely can work with the river and the system, working with folks like Nick Miller to understand better how we can reconnect the floodplains and allow it to do what it wants to do. And the fewer buildings in there, the better. We aren't going to have damage. It'll help the other systems downstream. It'll help the different communities downstream from us. Everything there allows us that opportunity to do more ahead of time.
And it's what we would want our neighbors in Vermont to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, there's a hand raised. Oh, sorry, Ryan Whitney.
Okay, Ryan, 1 minute, because we've already had chances to talk, but I'll give you one minute.
Yeah, just it's really discouraging to hear Victor talk about the floodplains like that when, as you're somebody who lives in, there's other information that only probably FERCog knows about, because I've been studying this map for 3 years. Roxanne's administration gave me access to this map because it's been around for a while. and all the other things that go with it. So somebody that's actually in the flood hazard zone that hasn't been talked about, it's a new addition to this like mapping system that you guys got going on. Maybe she can explain to you. And in the area that gets floods all the time, when you hear somebody saying, "Well, what it's gonna happen and stuff's gonna flood and we're gonna," well, my basement already floods. We already flood here. Like, no, my house isn't being like taken away or anything, but the health concerns around this flooding is what really is already bothering a lot of people in this town that are currently being flooded. So any more addition to the flooding that's already happening in the downtown area should be way more paid attention to and not thought of as our houses being washed away. It's actually like your basement being wet tons of the time in the mold and trying to get the stuff out of your house, and you get 4 inches of freaking water in your basement 3 times a year. You're never getting the mold out of your house, and I'm allergic to mold and I constantly deal with these health problems. So to hear it dismissed about flooding is just really sad. That's all I
Thank you,
really
Ryan.
want to say.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
You watch it?
Yeah, I assume we're talking about the issue we talked about when we were talking about the shelter over there. And I believe we've kind of made it very clear that the issue is the infrastructure of whatever that Maple Street thing, or there's something with the original culvert and that was built, and there's a problem there. And so the problem is understood, and I was explained the last time. There are
You can
efforts
ask
underway.
John Bottomley if he's still in the room. There's other parts
Ryan,
of town
Ryan,
that are
thank you.
being affected by this.
Ryan,
And if
we're
you're
gonna-
talking to me, I have to address you back.
No, you don't, Ryan. We're gonna meet you if you keep interrupting like that. I gave you a chance to talk out of order,
Well,
so.
ask
that's
John
good.
Bottomley. He's in the room if there's any other flooding in town. I'm
Got
not
it.
just talking about.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so I think one thing we want to do is give your thoughts on what we would like you to do if it were up to us.
Yep.
By June. Does anyone have any on the board have?
I like your idea of best practice, but I don't think we're gonna find it, because the intention is not to build it themselves. So I don't think there's anyone who's actually done any effort to determine what you can build inside these river corridors, because the goal is not to build.
It
So I
would
think it's
be
a
up
great
to you.
idea. I think it's a great idea to come up with something like that, so we don't restrict it. We don't have to. I think we should I don't think we're gonna get anything. I think it's a great idea to ask. I'm not anticipating anything.
Eric,
Let me just clarify, though, that it would be up to you as to what would be restricted and not restricted within the river corridor. So to say that there would be nothing built, a board might come up with that, but your board might not come up with that. So it would be up to you. Single-family houses, you could do it. Driveways, you could do it, not do it. Like there are a lot of nuances and ways to craft this. The model bylaw indicated, that you have a choice here and there, but you could stray beyond the model.
Tom, Eric, any
Mhm.
thoughts, questions?
I'm just trying to think of some example codes from other communities around the country. Because I worked in one in central Louisiana, where half of the town is underwater all the time. They're always flooding down there, and
Yeah.
they've been really trying to encourage people to move out, and the town's been working towards that, or build differently, build higher up. But I mean, it's a multifaceted approach they're using, but the end goal is to put it all in preservation and somehow compensate people who are suffering any kind of financial loss, and have a long-term plan to acquire and give room for the river to do that. It really boils down to long-term land acquisition in that corridor. Places.
I was asking the question about the, how much of it is impacted. It seems to be all up north, but I'm fairly persuaded that that's really our opportunity. It's not so much that it's a problem that it's only up there. It's sort of, that's where the opportunity is. And it's not that developed, and the river does move. I understand that rivers move. And so the place that actually there's the most divergence is where there's the most opportunity. So, I'm somewhat persuaded, Jeff, that there could be real benefit in trying to mirror more closely the whole area rather than allowing the stuff up north where there's actually the probably the biggest potential benefit. And we've already heard about the impacts it has down in the more developed area. So, and I know a lot of people are concerned, I'm concerned about the flooding in town. And because of the geography of our river being so built at the bottom, it's just like a chute.
Yeah.
So we sort of have an obligation to try to protect that as much as we can. And I think they're giving us an opportunity to improve our zoning to do that. So I guess I would embrace it.
I think what would be most helpful to retain, we should, I think, decouple the geography of the district from the ideas that would go into the ordinance. So we can choose whether or not to change the map or pull this into our existing floodplain district or do something else. So I think it's a separate debate about restricting use or not within this geography or that geography. But we have resources at our fingertips right now to give us things we can put into our zoning or just adopt as a model ordinance. I mean, I agree with Eric. I've also worked in Louisiana, and there's all sorts of things that are not, there's not a whole lot in our current zoning that would tell you how to elevate a house, how to build a more resilient, absorptive landscaping
Right, yeah,
plan.
there's so many different
Or
things, yeah.
like basements that can be designed to allow water to go through them. I mean, all those sorts of things.
Pass-through basins.
If you're going to build in the floodplain or the river corridor district, like we can choose which geography to apply it to. We need better rules that help make buildings, if you're going to do it, more resilient. Anyway, so if you could provide that on a separate track, and we can either treat that as a menu of options to pull into our existing code or take the whole thing wholesale, then you've given us lots to work with and we can continue the debate amongst ourselves.
So that's the fourth option you were talking about.
Yeah, it's a modular option, I guess.
Well, are you saying that would be added to your floodplain overlay district?
I don't think we have to decide that right now. You're
Okay.
giving us resources that we can then adapt into the zoning as we think make the most sense, but we shouldn't get hung up on, I don't like this line, I do like this line, and miss the opportunity to get a bunch of other good ideas integrated, such as, just like we're talking about design guidelines for downtown. Also. Just trying to add more good ideas that make Greenfield better and fit them where they make sense in the zoning.
Well, let me just see if I understand this, because your floodplain overlay district already says you can't add to the flooding problem, which means it's kind of like a math equation. There's this much storage in this floodplain. If you put a house, you'd have to like dig a hole to accommodate that, or you could put it on stilts. That's already, well, you know, some of the options that.
Well, those are implied if you're an engineer and you know how to figure that out, but we could be more explicit. That's another thing we're trying to do with the downtown guidelines. We're interpreting a sentence and trying to comment on the architecture of a whole block. So why don't we just be more clear about what we want so that we don't have to make it so subjective?
Well, I can look to see if there's some example somewhere of that kind of thing in a zoning bylaw. Design guidelines. The one thing that I would say is that, like, you know, there was that picture of the flooding during Irene, and like a house that's on the bank is now cantilevered out. So I don't think the design guidelines would help in that situation. Like, the house shouldn't have been in the,
Yeah,
yeah.
I might agree with you or I might not agree with it. That doesn't change whether or not it'd be helpful for us to see some of these. So I think we need to decouple these debates into discrete conversations. So
Okay.
point taken on the risks of building in both the floodplain and the river corridor area.
Okay.
But
So you're looking for design guidelines.
you can continue to make the case about whether or not to restrict things, but it would also be helpful to have ideas if we wanted to take a half measure on if we decided that we think it's okay to build in these areas as long as you do it right. What does doing it right mean?
Uh-huh.
And you could have a gradient of it. This kind of helps. This really helps. You know, this is like best. This is the best. This is the Cadillac of flood resilience. This is the Band-Aid approach, and then we can use our judgment to decide which and what grade we want to apply.
Okay.
Maybe people who have land in this area, they put it into river corridor conservation easement and then you get a tax rebate. They don't pay taxes on it. I mean, there are different
Yeah.
incentives, economic incentives that you can also use. And you know, and maybe there are grants, federal grants, like, you know, we had, I mean, there's no money from the feds right now, but in the future, there might be, and for acquisition, you know, to compensate some of these people, and, you know, the fact that these exist, normally that's licensed to go in there and do whatever you want in that footprint, no matter where it is in a wetland. But I would want to discourage that personally and say, you know, we got to figure out something else for all
Mhm.
this property here.
Yep. Okay,
Makes sense?
yep,
Thank you for coming back. Thanks for all this information as well.
Okay, sure. Considering it,
Thank you.
right.
David? Sure.
And we're also at the confluence here. You got the Deerfield River coming in, you got the Green River coming in, and then you've got this,
Right there.
this really tight
What's this?
way that runs parallel to Cheapside, where it's like a sluice way going into the Connecticut. And you've got these two rivers coming in and meeting and trying to squeeze their way through that topography, which is bounded on both sides by, because it's the fault line.
All right, next item, presentation by CPA Chair David Singer regarding zoning amendment to define and zone for housing shelter. So, David, thank you for coming. We distribute your memo. And if people don't have the memo or the supporting reference materials, we have prints over there.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for letting me come here and speak on this issue and speak before you. I'm here kind of as a team effort. I'm trying to give you insight into what it felt like for me and for, I'll speak for the rest of the board, to be involved with Arch Place, and then the fact that a lot of your discussion came out of the Arch Place experiences. And when I saw or heard that you had modified the zoning code to add a new word shelter, and it was going to be sort of a group home equivalent, and you were going to let that happen as a matter of right, I felt that I had to come before you and speak to that and give you some insight as to what it's like on this side of the table. So you might reconsider that vote and think about things along the lines that I'm trying to suggest to you in the memo, which I think is a great way for us to kind of hook up together on the planning and the enforcement piece, instead of us reacting to something and having it alter a lot where it's not really necessary. So,
And just one point of clarification, that the change that we had discussed in the past is not approved zoning. So we still have time to modify that, right?
Yes.
We didn't actually enact it or anything.
that's true.
So not to say we weren't considering it, but
No, but-
it's a good time for you to come in.
It is not.
Well, no, to put it in a different context, once you, under state law, once you did what you did and Ella sent it over to the clerk's office.
I did not.
No, but you were ready to send it over to the clerk's office. You were ready to do that. That would have triggered that would have meant that was in the system and it would have had to go before
Yes,
city.
we were on the cusp of doing so.
So I would have talked about it at that part, at that time, but I thought it was better I talked to you at this time.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Ella, I didn't mean any.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting the record.
Can I just put a little background from what I remember of the meeting, if I may, because we had a lot of discussion. The big piece of it kept coming up was Dover. And the impression that I left that meeting at when we did that vote was that we really could not restrict, where restrict was used, particularly anything that had Dover protection. So the original definition had zones in it, had particular areas where this was going to be allowed. But the impression that was given at that meeting was that that didn't mean anything. So if we said it could only be in 3 districts and somebody bought a multifamily house in a residential area next to a school, wanted to put in a shelter for recovering alcoholics and said they were going to teach them life lessons, they could put it there. That was the impression I got from our meeting. When I read your memo, it didn't seem to say that. Your memo seems to say that we can list specific areas where a shelter can be, and those are the only areas that a shelter, whether it's Dover or not Dover, can. And did I read that correct?
That's not
Not
correct.
my reading.
Okay, so that's what I thought. Okay, so we're in the same boat then. We're not trying to allow it by right. I just didn't think we could
No,
restrict it.
but, okay, I guess the interpretation I had was that that's what you were suggesting, so I wanted to put it to a halt so that we could come back to talking about it in the context of Dover. My impression from Arch Place was there were two weaknesses in the ordinance. One was Dover clarification. Nobody really knew how to define it. And the second was site plan review. The site plan review is what went all the way up to the zoning board. And so my being involved that directly, having to think about zoning issues in relation to site plan review before the planning board made me aware of some things that I want to share with you.
Thank you.
So to your question, the answer to your question is that you cannot restrict Dover applicants from uses that they're allowed, that are under the educational or religious umbrella. Okay? But that's only an orientation. The orientation I would like to see is that we want to zone our community the way we want to protect our community. And if the law allows for Dover applicants to come in as an exception to what our planning is, then we need to put in our bylaw, what is the Dover Amendment and who qualifies for this Dover Amendment? So that that is not in place right now. It's not done through that type of specific method. So what was happening is that the name Dover was coming up and things were happening under Dover, but it wasn't related. It was within the realm of the planning department to just decide on a case-by-case basis how they were going to deal with it, instead of having a systemic way of viewing these kind of applications. Because I'm positing to you that the planning should be that shelters should be exactly as they are now. There are 4 zones where they're allowed. They're allowed under the auspices of lodging house. Anything for profit like a sober home or anything related to that has to come before the ZBA for a special permit. It triggers the building inspector to inspect the building and issue a building permit. We just had a sober home situation where, because we were trying to be nice, the sober home came in without permission. They didn't have safety features. They came for a special permit. They were already up and running. We said it was okay. They still don't have some of the safety features in. We weren't able to monitor it. Now, even under the current code, we weren't. So we do not want to do, in my opinion, we do not want to do away with those kinds of protection. Now, a Dover candidate comes in. There's nothing, I'm not saying it like the policy in the Commonwealth is things that are related to education or religious use cannot be NIMBY'd away. People can't come in and fight them. They just can't. That's our state public policy. So they enacted a statute that said under those circumstances, the zoning doesn't, the prohibition or the restrictions like special permit or prohibitions do not apply, and your uses are allowed. As long as you prove to us, this is the orientation, you prove to us now that you're qualified. Not every nonprofit is a Dover nonprofit. Okay, so that's my first suggestion, is to pull back, keep the lodging house as that's what we want. Define Dover hard. Even put a use table in that says, hey, Dover, you're in. This is how you get in. You have to prove this, you're in. And that's what the AG wants you to do. You have no choice in that regard.
And that language exists.
That language exists in our code in a buried way.
Does the language exist on what is allowed under Dover?
Yes.
Because we were a little bit surprised about how broad it is actually now. And it includes no energy and some other things
Yes.
that I would not have thought.
Yes.
Is it clear so that we can actually specify, or is it a little nebulous? what's in Dover, what's a Dover protected use.
Our current bylaw,
Well, I'm not talking about our bylaw, I'm just saying, period. Is a Dover protected use something we can be specific about? Is that universe known? That's what I'm asking. Because I was surprised how broad it was.
no, the premise, again, it doesn't feel good to know that there's this big exception out there, and no matter how you zone, the exception is going to hold. So I'm saying, let's orient ourselves the other way. What do we want? And then if a Dover candidate comes in under any of those exceptions, the one that was in front of us was an educational use, right? But yes, you have no choice. You have to comply with the state law.
All I'm asking, David, is you said you want to specify what is a Dover allowed use, and I'm just saying, I was not as aware as that they were as broad as they are. So I'm just wondering, is it clear that we could put it into our code, what they are? What I would say is
The Dover Amendment, the Dover Amendment relates to I believe, the religion and the education. I don't think that's the whole statute, but I don't know.
The ADUs, that
So
one.
that's the language of the statute. I think according to case law, the interpretation of that, so we can just refer to that section of 40A. The case law has shown that the interpretation of that is shifting. And so the AG's guidance referred to other uses like daycare uses and ADUs.
and I think solar or energy use, battery.
Right,
storage.
I've heard that too. I don't think that
battery storage is
that's in the legislation itself.
Anyway, so that was just the thing. But what I would say, David, is that I really appreciate you coming forward because I was not aware that there were sort of non-Dover uses that are active now, such as for-profit sober homes, that we want to stay, and have the proper process and protection for. So that's an important class, and you just brought one to our attention. So we don't want to unravel that.
I knew that.
That would be one thing. The second thing is that we would like to have site plan review because, it was weird. I wasn't on it, but my understanding was site plan review was triggered because it was a mixed use and a change in use. In my mind, that use should trigger site plan. In my mind, it just should. So, and right now our code doesn't allow for that. So I would support and think it would be positive to require for lodging houses, whether they're Dover protected or not, to require site plan review for them. Because I don't believe right now they actually are in all cases.
So that's a great segue into, so that was my point, that if we pull back the shelter and just put it aside and keep it the way it is and add Dover so everybody understands, that's the first problem being solved.
Right.
The second thing is you were also headed to changing the definition of site plan review because of the reasons that you just articulated. So if it's a non-Dover, site plan review will be under special permit. Okay, so that's already in there. The ZBA would do it.
That would come to you,
That would
right?
come to us. But if it's Dover, you're allowed to limit certain items that are listed in the statute. There's like 6 of them or 7 of them. And you could have a special provision that says, in relation to, if you make the changes that I'm suggesting, you would say a Dover applicant or a Dover project still has to comply with the following site plan elements. And you could add that sentence to your site plan, which is where you were headed anyway. And I totally support that. But by having this discussion, I think maybe it further clarifies kind of how you frame it. But again, the Dover thing it's a carve out. You have to accept it. And
I think the idea of having the planning staff review it and make a judgment about whether Dover is triggered or not is great. And if you're capable of doing that, and that's a process that's normal, that would make sense.
But they
to me.
can do it. It's just that the code is, I think it is a lift for Ella to say, I'm smart enough to do it, but I'd like the code to kind of give me guidance. And I could say to an applicant, this is what you got to do. It's not me. It's not me doing it.
Well, that makes it.
So you're suggesting somewhere in the
You can
code
say that.
defining the requirements of a Dover application.
Should we look at the examples to people, or are you ready to get to that?
To what?
Did you have another thing?
Well, Springfield has
Oh, no, I'll leave it to you. I'm glad to make the presentation. I'll keep talking, but
But did you have another point you wanted to make, David, or was these are the two things kind of, one is leave it as it is. And the second was what to
Well-
do about site plan.
I want, I just want you all to read the benefits that I wrote in the memo. That's really the important thing. And to try to guide you into how, when it comes back to us, we now, and it also comes back to you in the site plan process, you have the ability to do it. No, there's nothing, the definition, if you take the time, there'll be another session when you go over this stuff and you'll decide what you want to do. But you can look right at these documents and look up Dover Amendment, look up the qualifications that are necessary, look up the table. And you can come back at any time that you're ready to do it and, put motions on the table, and forward something. Again, it's your writing, but if you think this is generally the way to do it, send it off to the council. And of course, now that the council overheard what we're trying to do, they'll be more welcoming of it and it'll be supported all the way up the chain. So you'll get a smooth path up to rather than, wait a minute, put the brakes on. Kind of thing.
Yep.
This makes sense to me. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, me too.
I think the site plan review is so critical
Yeah.
for the success on both sides, for the person developing this and for the community, because we want this to work for everybody. And we obviously need these types of projects. We have a problem in our society and we need these types of projects. But site plan review allows you to put them in a context that's going to be supportive of the program that is trying to be happening in that place.
It also brings the applicant before you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
And the community.
I'm coming from the perspective that a good design can solve a lot of problems. And it's not only the design of a building, but it's also the design of the site and how all of that interconnects.
Mhm.
And you put this kind of project in the wrong place, it's going to fail no matter what. You put it in the right place and you design it properly and you really pay attention to the community, not just design in a vacuum, your little parcel, but you look at the whole thing. You can have a very successful project that's successful for the inhabitants, the clients of that, for the residents of that, for the neighborhood, for everybody. It's win-win for everybody. So that site plan review for me is such a missing piece and really needs to be in there.
So one other question. Do you think there's any, do you think that an applicant could skirt the issue? When I think of a lodging, I think of payment for service. Okay, shelters typically are not payment for service. So do you really think that it fits here? Could we create a definition for a shelter and include all the specifics of a lodging house, but that, so that it's clearly defined that this is not pay for service, this is something else, but we see it here.
So
That's right.
there's two different theories that I work on. One is let's specify it so that we really know what we're doing. And the other is create a definition that has some fluidity so that, you're always able to use the fluidity to promote your point of view. Okay, it can work against you, but it also helps when you're in the position of the building inspector or the zoning board. If you wanted to do that, then you'd have to encourage the building inspector to come and talk to the planning board about what specifically he would think is appropriate language to do that. Right now, I think that while it doesn't solve the problem that you're talking about, it's flexible enough, at least for the moment. But I would say that if you're interested in that, then it's harder than you think. There has to be, the thing has to be pretty specific. And so I don't know the answer to that. I'm not saying that I know the answer to how to define shelter, but I did look up, I think Ellen did too. We couldn't even find the word in other zoning ordinances. So I'm not saying that we couldn't be ahead of the time of everybody, but it indicated to me that there might be a problem in narrowing the word. And so therefore keep the definition more broad-minded so that everybody kind of, there's pressure from everybody and then you find a way through it.
What I found a little confusing looking at some of the Springfield was the language, as it talks about dwelling, and then it has different types of dwelling, one of which was SRO.
Yeah.
So dwelling SRO, okay, now SRO And then it says, well, what is a dwelling unit? Well, because a dwelling is something with dwelling units in it. And then a dwelling unit, it said, is something that has independent facilities for living, cooking, and everything else. But above in SRO, it says an SRO is something without independent cooking. So I'm like, okay, an SRO dwelling doesn't, but a dwelling unit has to. How do these things work together exactly? And then ours says a lodging house is not a congregate house. So, okay, well, I know there's the Morgan House right on, High Street there. That feels like, what is that exactly? That feels like a congregate house. Okay, I would almost thought that was a lodging house, but if it's it's a congregate house, so maybe it's not a lodging. It's very confusing. That's my only point. It's like these things are 6 things that define something, and you can almost, ooh, it's defined here differently than here. They're not really coherent.
But
So-
you're being challenged now in terms of defining housing, because housing is a big issue in Greenfield. And there's a lot more to it than just what's in the zoning ordinance right now. But all I'm saying to you is the direction you were going, I just wanted to pull you back and take a baby step in this direction, and then continue your good discussion about the kinds of things that you just brought up. What I found was that Springfield was the most straightforward zoning ordinance, in terms of the way it presented
I
itself.
liked it.
And I looked at I looked at Gardner, Pittsfield, forget Northampton, you need a PhD to read that. I mean, it's really ridiculous. So anyway, that's a side.
I really appreciate you suggesting on the site plan, because that was what I think all of us felt like,
Yeah.
okay.
But you have to be careful how
We
you
can't
draft
do
it.
much about the use, but we can have a site plan to create a community process. And where there's some things about this, we can work on some of the rough edges. One thing that was commented was mass and height. That is intriguing to me. Can we really regulate mass through our site plan and height outside of zoning,
I think that's a really good question. So if you have things in your code, you obviously could use it for your site plan review. But to bring your own judgment to site plan review without something codified, I think would prove to be might be problematic.
And parallel with that height and size is also number of residents. Because you have a large number of residents in a facility like that, in a neighborhood of single-family homes, you're very quickly overwhelming the social dynamics, and in my mind, compromising the success of those clients being reintegrated. There is a scale thing that goes on.
But it's unclear we have a lot to say about that. So
Huh?
I'm interested
Well, yeah,
in
I don't
knowing how
know.
much
Do
you
we?
can have.
Well, can we with zoning and size, and I don't know, can we? I mean, that's the question I have, because it's a real issue. It's a real issue.
Ellen, did you have something to?
Sorry.
Yeah, just to clarify that, the AG guidance is very specific about what site plan, and Chairman Singer kind of alluded to this, that the site plan review is further limited by Dover for Dover protected
Okay.
uses. So according to the AG guidance, it may impose, quote, reasonable dimensional requirements in one of 8 categories:
Okay.
bulk and height of structures, yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage. So I don't know the exact interpretation of those things, but just wanted to be clear what we mean by site plan
Bulk
review.
and height is in there, so it's interesting.
And that's going to be by the zone, that's going to define that, so that theoretically, that dimensional thing will limit the number of occupants. And keep it in line with the type of neighborhood, the setting, the surroundings.
Yeah.
I mean, one would hope that,
You're right about that.
but because I think that's really an issue. And yeah, I don't need to say more on that. But it's,
Constant tension,
well, exactly.
So you guys are creating the tension, and then we have to deal with.
No, but also
That's
just.
why I want to make sure I kind of come back around and then just a little
Which
bit.
tension is the most fun, you think?
If you look at your time,
I look at your agenda, I'm like, whoa, boy. Like, oh, boy.
just look at his social dynamics and how, whatever, I don't want to get into a whole thing on that. But they-
I'll let you go with your business. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
I think, yeah, so thank you for coming. I think it's great for our board to work together. You've got the war stories. You're dealing with all out of the decisions we make.
And you're welcome the same to our.
Okay, maybe not the one that had 100 things on the agenda.
200.
Thank you.
That's David.
Okay.
So do we have any idea
We
where?
should have design guidelines for these things. That, because the issue with smoking areas, the issue with, outdoor areas for congregating.
Well, we heard their view on smoking areas.
Well, no, but
We
it,
want them.
no, I know, but it's a real issue.
I know it's real issue.
Yeah, it's.
But the reason they had like no area of that looked nice was we don't want to encourage it.
Yeah.
So do we know where the smart policy is by defining? Do you know where to get that? By defining Dover Amendment and adding detailed requirements relative to?
So I think we could, I mean, we can continue discussing this. If we wanted to continue down this path, we have very clear guidance and someone is willing to help us out. Ella's got additional information, like we could put together what we think makes sense. A revised version of our approach to Dover/shelters based on this guidance and talk about that at a future meeting.
Yeah, that's one of our off meeting things.
We'll get to whether or not we have off meetings anymore later.
That's coming next.
Uh-huh.
What do you think, Ellen, about what the best approach would be? Based on, I mean, you kind of helped identify and shape this.
I think it helps to clarify the Dover process.
We know where to get that information. That was my question.
Springfield, so do you have those? examples?
I didn't print that out.
They're over there on the bench. Here's a copy of the.
Here.
I think I would borrow from that. Hopefully. And I think thinking holistically about all of the definitions for dwelling units makes sense, although it's a much bigger project.
Yeah, it's crazy how
And so some very.
it should be so simple.
And but I really appreciate what you said too, the example of Stover Homes as a non-Dover protected
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, I was reading about one of them that has had some issues and I'm like, oh, didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't want to take that away.
I think a suggestion of talking to the building inspector too, to the extent we want to get more and more detailed, Mark Snow would have more examples and stories of, to just
But I
fill in the
can,
gap.
I think like, I want to give an example here. The Lunt Silversmith site. Do you know that? Okay, former Lunt Silversmith. So that site there, they have all that parking in the front. And I know everybody has to park somewhere, employees have to park somewhere, but instead of having people congregating on the sidewalk, socializing residents, because they want to get outside and get fresh air, I don't blame them. And
I mean, you don't enjoy seeing them all standing on
Well,
Federal Street?
no, and it's close to the bus stop there, but that whole parking area could have been a fantastic outdoor green space with benches, with proper lighting, things.
In the front or the back?
In the front,
Yeah.
on Federal Street. And, find another place for the park. I know parking's always an issue and people who work there need a place to park, but I mean, I feel like it's a missed design opportunity
Yeah.
for the residents that are there.
Whenever you drove by and see that whole crowd on there, it's like, just like.
Well, and it's not good for them. It's not helpful for the residents. It's not helpful for the neighbors. And it's just, nobody's winning with that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, thinking about a site actually, and how you transition from public to private to semi, between neighbors, all that stuff. There is a design element to this that can make or break a place. And then there's the issue of scale. That's a huge place. Okay, it's on Federal Street, but single family residence, lower.
So I got the impression from David, just this, that he was looking for us to define what an applicant for Dover needed to provide for us. And I didn't see that here.
That's under Article 12. So definitions includes the definition of the Dover Amendment, the definition of an educational
Yeah.
exempt use and a group home, which is kind of like the definition that includes both sober homes and shelter.
Well,
Which is not what I think Chairman Singer is recommending, but just interesting to see how this is applied.
but if,
And then the use table just has a row for educationally exempt uses, and it just is D. It doesn't even say special permit or site plan, it just says D. So it's just like really calling out Dover. And then section 12 says what the applicant needs to provide to prove their Dover exemption.
Yeah, that's what they need.
I don't know if we have that.
I didn't see, I think it says.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think that's what they need to provide.
Oh, wait, this. Oh, no, okay, it just didn't say the word Dover. Yeah, it's a demonstration of qualification.
Site plan review for religious educational.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I keep
Not
looking
site
for,
plan review.
yeah. It's quite a bit of substantiation.
Okay, yeah, under use, Article 4, use regulations, section 4640.
I think what Victor's looking at is 12.6.21,
Okay,
where you, how do you prove you are Dover? to
yeah,
begin with?
right, okay.
What are we? We're in 12?
12, yeah, page, the second,
6.
second
Yeah,
page,
yeah,
12.
looks like there's actually
109,
two
the last
places, so.
Well, I see it.
This.
Right, 48, section 3 is Dover. MGL, chapter 48, section.
If we're looking at this, this document. Article 12.
Deed of the property, proposed lease, the articles of organization of the bylaws, letter of termination granting tax exempt status. Material making the case for exempt.
That proves all not exempt. The only thing that says anything about education is demonstrating the case of exempt education, that the organization has a bona fide educational purpose and program, including but not limited to its materials in section 4.6.4, whatever that is.
Yeah, that seems pretty extensive. I mean, it's interesting. It really does. You were raising it earlier, Victor. It really has to be by state law, I guess, a nonprofit. So an educational, and a school has to be a nonprofit to be covered by Dover. And a entity has to be on land owned by a nonprofit. And the entity has to be a nonprofit that's delivering the services. So a for-profit sober house could not meet the Dover kind of provisions.
Yeah, those, the for-profit.
Is that the main, is the sober house the main thing that's, is there a kind of a for-profit model for? I mean, are there other things that there's a for-profit model for that would be otherwise sort of over? I wasn't aware.
That could be a question for the building commissioner.
Just kind of wondering what other activities besides sober houses.
One piece of advice that David offered was assume that there is.
Yeah.
Don't assume that there's not,
Yeah.
because things will get invented
It
and
will
then,
be, yeah.
yeah. There's no reason to just leave it open because we can't think of one, which,
Well, and there probably are more. There are probably 2 or 3.
Unfortunately, mental health is a big money-making thing in this
Yeah.
country, which has not led to success.
Right.
Full.
But there will be a lot of for-profit health account.
people found a way to
Sadly.
make money on that, yeah.
Sadly, it's just a way to make money.
Well, I would certainly support working with David to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where would we put this in our zoning? Where would this go?
The process,
Yeah, this demonstration of qualification.
I haven't considered that yet, but I think we could find a place.
It was probably good.
These two are pretty, the 4.640 and 12.621 are kind of similar. Two sides of the same coin maybe, but I mean, is it reasonable to, how much urgency do we feel on this one is one question.
Is there anything in the pipeline? Anybody knows about? Anybody's bought a piece of land, property, trying to do something like that?
I think one of the questions is what happens to Wells Ave, Arch Street, once it moves out. And is there going to be another use there? And would that use require site plan or not? And under the current, I think unless it's a change in use, I'm not clear it would. So I get a sense that that might be one.
Would this trigger it?
Well, it depends what they're going to use it for.
If they're a Dover protected use and they continue to be a Dover protected use,
Site plan is what I'm talking about though.
That's already been done.
temporary.
But I'm not sure, would there be if someone wanted to put a shelter in that didn't have housing or temporary? What was it that triggered the,
Site plan review?
Yeah.
It was considered a mixed use.
because if you, and maybe anything would be there? I don't know.
Sorry,
Would any use be considered a mixed use there? Because the offices just are
not
there,
necessarily,
so,
like if they get rid of the offices.
so you could put a shelter in, just as an example. Not with mixed use, and it wouldn't have site plan. There wouldn't be a site plan review requirement.
Depends on how that shelter application is interpreted. If it's interpreted as a lodging house, then it would. I think we could apply site plan. I think we could apply site plan.
And one perspective is that the interpretation of that building as a mixed-use housing and commercial building, multifamily and commercial, is an odd interpretation that might not be repeated. That's
Yes, that'd be one. You could call this a lodging.
Even if they make the argument that, oh, it's the same thing, we could say, well, actually, that's a lodging house and that's not what it was before. So that's a change of use that triggers a site plan review.
I have just a question here. So we have, I mean, the thing with site plan review the arguments against that I hear is it makes development difficult and more costly. It's a control mechanism that we have. Are we trying to encourage more types? I wouldn't say encourage. Do we need more types of these projects in Greenfield, or are people feeling like we have enough already, that we're a magnet for that kind of stuff? I think, requiring site plan review of all these things is just another way for us as a community to control and make sure projects are being done properly and that they're going to be
I
successful.
think these have real impacts on neighborhoods. and
Yeah, they do.
They just need
So-
a community process.
Exactly.
which Site plan is our
Exactly.
process.
So I have no problem tacking on site plan,
I don't-
plan review to use after use after use, because
Well, on use like this one, and again, it's a
we
weird
really
thing
need.
where
we
I
need-
think they came up with a way of having site plan fit in this particular case, but it was a sort of an unusual interpretation. It might be a cleaner way
But
in the
if,
future.
but if we leave shelters under lodgings, then technically we have to look at all the lodgings, houses. And come up with a site plan.
We should if it's three or more. different
So
things, or
is that-
four
is
or
that-
more unrelated.
But is a lodging house
More than
currently
four
require
related
site plan
people.
review?
Lodging house requires
Special permit.
And so they'll do the site plan review over there.
I mean, is there,
but
wasn't
if
there,
they're Dover exempt, it will not require special.
And would it require currently then a site plan?
I think that's open to interpretation.
Because we would, I think, want it to.
Right, if it's interpreted as a lodging house and they exercise the Dover Amendment, I think we could still, within that framework, require a site plan per Dover
Yeah,
guidelines.
could we put a line that says any Dover application has site plan review?
Yes,
Just say that, any
There we
Dover
go.
application
It
has site plan review.
would be a modified site plan review because the statute only lets us regulate certain types of things, but they're substantial things.
Yeah, the mass of the building is
Right.
pretty substantial.
I was responding to, is there anything, how timely is this? And is there something that's gonna happen? It sounds like probably not, you know?
well, we
Because-
just still need to get this in place.
Because most things that happen are gonna trigger site plan review anyway,
Well,
if we determine that they're lodging houses.
But we also have to then correct in site plan review that we're really looking at, it's not just a plan, we're seeing elevations, we're looking at, how are people accessing the site? How are they using the exterior part of the site, the interior part of the site? We really have to be more specific.
I think that's in our site plan already.
Well, no, we had that building on Federal Street, the eye
But they
doctor,
didn't,
that,
but they didn't follow what was required.
Yeah,
What I
that's right.
understand, they didn't.
but we didn't enforce when they came before
That's
us.
up to us. so
Because
they-
I sat here asking, where are
It's
the
nice to see the
elevations?
sign
Oh,
up.
they've been done, but we don't have them.
Yeah.
Of course they had them.
So then we could
It's
tell
like,
them.
we really should, I mean, I was being really
That's our
worried about that.
Yeah.
Granted, there are these two big, beautiful trees in front that are, camouflaging the whole thing, so. But that whole street front is blank. There's no eyes on the street on Main Street.
You asked the
that
question, how.
people-
should we
well,
take care?
I don't
think
wanna
we
go
should
into
take
that,
it off.
but-
Or take it- I think we
But
should.
Yeah.
I have another question. I was under the impression that in the past, there was some kind of law in Massachusetts that if you have more than 4 unrelated people, and you know about this, in a dwelling, that it changes, it's no longer a single family dwelling.
No, that's not true.
That's not true anymore?
Because I sat on a committee meeting with David about 112. Oh, what's the big street up there? Chestnut Street.
Mhm.
The guy bought the houses in LLC. He had 4 to 8 people living in the house. And the town, the building inspector, Tom Snow? Mark Snow. Mark Snow says this is an apartment building
Yeah.
and you need to put all this stuff into it. And they, to know, we're a family and they got approved. Yep, you're right, it's a
Who
family.
signed up on that?
PTA.
Well, the Springfield one said,
But
I
isn't there a state?
Yeah,
Isn't
it's a local,
there a
it's
state?
it's a local
law?
rule,
Local rules.
local, not state.
It's a local, okay.
Do
we have
there
that
is no
agreement?
limit on the number of people in
Unrelated.
a dwelling
Because the
unit.
problem comes with.
And there's no definition of family.
No definition of family, that's the problem.
I
No
think- I think we
I
had
think
definition.
the
something in there
Springfield
that
one
it's
talked about
More than four.
two generational or like, you know, oh, I forget what the word is, but I think it's a family unit is like your nuclear plus one level out or something. There was some reference, I read it when I was looking through these.
The Springfield defines family.
Yeah,
Do not.
Greenfield does not.
Which is a different, additional debate.
yeah.
Like I said,
I wouldn't really want to go down that road myself.
So maybe,
Well, you have the grandparents, you got the parents, you got the kids,
maybe maybe we just
That's
drop the
three
whole idea.
generations. which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but they're all related. That's
Anyway,
different.
we're kind of
yeah, let's,
different.
Victor, what were you gonna suggest?
So I said, maybe the best way to approach it is we just drop the whole idea of defining a shelter. We leave everything where it is, and we just put in, like I said, that phrase that says, any Dover application does require site plan review as per the Dover guidelines, and just, that's the bottom line, because that way we'll see it anyway. If they're gonna come to us and say, Dover, with, okay, great, congratulations, prove it, first we say prove it.
So you like the proving it part
Yeah,
too?
prove
Oh, yeah,
that you are,
absolutely.
and then now that you've proven it, great, you're due for site plan review.
So are we,
Now we don't have to worry about the.
are we concluding?
Right, yeah.
Are we concluding that the shelter issue is actually defined fine by lodging house? And that we don't really have to redefine?
We're not even worried if they define the
We're
shelter.
okay.
They're gonna come in as Dover.
No, I understand, but we're saying right now, we know what it is. It's a lodging house. And then if it's a Dover lodging house, if it's a Dover protected thing, it goes down this road. If it's not Dover protected, it goes down that. But it's already defined in our code as a lodging house.
David's idea was that shelters as we imagine them would likely be lodging house, probably not the multifamily as before, but like that's how the building commissioner would look at it.
Yeah.
And then they need to determine if that's what they're coming forward with. So there are, if it's not overprotected, it's covered by special permit.
So it feels like the thing we were trying to define, shelter, is not, doesn't need to be defined. Your point.
No, because
Here's the lodging house definition if you want to.
Yeah.
More than two groups,
Not having cooking facilities in the rooms, not share single housing.
basically an SRO.
Fraternity houses. It does not include group residences licensed or regulated by the state or rest homes so licensed. So it has to be a regulated home. It's not included.
see, now that's it. It does not include group residences licensed by regulated agencies in common. There's no shelter group residence.
Those are regulated by the building code.
It says they're not, it does not include.
Yeah, section 71, I can look that up. That actually I don't think is problematic. I forget exactly what that is. So.
And rest homes are probably a different animal too.
Yeah, like the license. I'll look that up right now.
And that's all the different building code thing.
Yeah, I think so. So
Sorry.
so the next step would be to take, I guess, on the-
Busy.
Who scheduled that?
on the urgency question, I mean, to just create urgency, we went through this contentious conversation about a project recently, and people on the phone right now that I know feel passionately about this.
Yep.
It's like right in front of us.
Yeah.
We could say, oh, well, there's nothing in the pipeline. Maybe there is, and it takes a long time to get these things through anyway, so
Yeah.
we might as well just do it.
Yeah, you're
I'm
done.
all for that.
I think we're already done.
Yeah, I wait,
think
get it
path
done.
forward.
Let's get it done.
So
And
then,
plus, it's a good thing. This,
then the-
I mean, this is, we really need this.
so the process would be to, Ella, I guess it's the process to ask you to maybe working with David,
Come up.
Make a
with something
suggested
for us to
language.
Consider, yeah.
we could discuss at our next meeting.
So language for the zoning code that spells out how to prove Dover exemption and that if you prove Dover protection requires site plan
As
consistent with.
Dover got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's simple.
Yeah.
Okay, that seemed, okay.
And we could, I know we're working on design review guidelines right now, but there might be a little list of bullet points of guidelines in the site plan that this is what you need to talk about when you present your site.
Yeah, I think that's
plan
part of
review.
it, yeah.
I think they need to look at design guidelines, period, because
Yeah.
they're building particularly if they build downtown. They build somewhere else, they don't have to.
No, but
They build in
there-
the city,
I
they
think-
need-
The design guidelines, good design guidelines would apply to a lot of these areas. Because we're talking about population density in these facilities that, would benefit from some of the things we're proposing in design guidelines. So I think we should, the developer, whoever's presenting their project to the board should address these things and tell us what they're doing.
Right now, I think we're just looking at the downtown CC district, so we
Yeah.
need to say something different.
Okay,
So how are we doing?
game plan on that one, good. Next item. Discussion and editing of draft downtown design guidelines as well as discussion of how the guidelines relate to site plan review.
What? I don't get it. Oh, discussion.
Jared, do you want?
No, I'm good. That's what's. Yeah, this is probably for me, because when you sent out the last revision that you had, I noticed a lot of things had been dropped. I was asked to go before the tree people. So I sent my stuff to, Margot, is that her name?
Yeah.
Margot? I sent the one you sent me to Margot, asking her to comment on it. What she said back, I just didn't bring my phone. She sent back with some very simple comments, but there's nothing about plantings or trees. And I said, well, that's what I asked you to comment on, Margot, was there, but then when I read what you sent, there was nothing in there, it had been taken out. So everything on plantings and trees was gone. So we removed all the specific stuff that was in there.
That's right. The reason for
We can
that.
just add the planting
Well,
plan.
but I-
We
the reason
can
was
tack that on.
Referred to the
Yeah.
other document, which was better than what we had in here, it was more
Right.
comprehensive, but what it didn't do was address shrubs and landscaping, which I also talked to someone at the tree committee and they feel they're not expert in that. That was the reason. that was the reason.
Well, then why shouldn't we include something? Say, look, why don't you put these in here? Because it's recommended as a Massachusetts planting guideline. And do not want to do that?
So I thought that they would have such suggestions.
No,
And-
they do not. They had nothing. I was like, and I read back, oh, I feel absolutely stupid, Margot. I'm sorry. It's not in this copy.
It's my fault. I hope you blame me. No.
I'm not blaming anybody. I was like, and then we also got rid of the intent, which I thought was something else we were talking about having in there. No, and it's.
And
this was a good
Well, I think you
roll
just
That's the
moved all of
purpose.
the.
So I don't mind going away and got the background as well. So I guess my question was, did we feel, I guess I felt that it should be kind of a group discussion. Because I thought the background had some value in that it kind of told them how we got, and the question was brought up, who is this for? Maybe the developer could care less about it. If that's really what's for.
Just for clarity, are you, when you say background, is that like a preface to the whole thing or is that
That's
for each
yeah.
section?
It was a preface at the beginning, which had that picture of downtown, which
Right.
was just kind of just a preface. This is why we're doing this.
Right.
Was to avoid this happening on a larger scale. than it
Why don't you just go
has.
find it? So
And
it's
it,
like.
and then the intent was basically just to give the person who is now reading this guideline an idea of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Is that not what the purpose does here?
So that does it for the paper in general. That's fine. That each one had a little section like, why are we doing this? Why is lighting in here?
It was, and we talked about this at each chapter having like one sentence. Site design, landscaping, this is important, because architectural design, so just introduce the top.
Yeah.
For each
That's-
of these.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was in there. So I just, again, if we don't want it, if the group doesn't want, I'm fine with it.
No, we need
Don't
it.
remember, not
I
discussed.
mean, I believe we need, it, so I'm voting for, we need this.
That's fine.
I'm making my
I might have
position clear.
misunderstood our last
Need
conversation. I
that
thought
little
that
intro,
either we didn't need it or it was, we could put it back for sure. I agree.
one sentence.
It's rather than the intent being implied by the details, we just state it for each
Yeah.
one and then the details support it.
Right. That was what that.
The only thing I worry about this is it's a lot of bullet points. It's a lot of stuff. There's no graphics, no visuals.
Yeah, pretty intense.
This is, you know, it's lots of pages. This is a slog for somebody to get through, somebody who comes here and like, hey, you know, you gotta meet design guidelines. It's gonna be like, well, they're gonna spend a lot of time reading this.
You can't say you gotta meet them. That's the only bad part about this, is that there's no enforcement. It's really a guideline. We can talk about it.
We are encouraging
be
you
entirely true.
to incorporate these recommended elements.
Yeah, I think,
But this is past your project.
I think illustrations are wonderful for things, but you know, again.
All right, so just to take these piece by piece, so having a
People are
statement,
not gonna know what a cornice or a parapet is, or a belt course. Block people don't know what that is.
we won't be able to illustrate every single one of these. And also, I mean, so my sense of illustrations is they are leading and can be prescriptive. It can be taken as prescriptive when there is more flexibility in reality. That's it.
So you're thinking if we say it needs to look like that clock on the wall, and we use that clock as an image, you're gonna think.
Then we're gonna get 100
If you
clocks.
say,
like
yeah, it
that.
needs to have a clock and here's a picture of a clock. They might
Right.
read
I
it.
was gonna
That's
say,
the
where do
clock
I
they want.
buy
That's the clock they want.
That's
Where
it.
do I want, where do I buy this
I don't
clock?
think that we need to be
Yeah, I understand.
totally
I understand
absolute
what
about
you're
it.
saying.
So having pictures, diagrams, I mean, we had them before. Some of them, I don't think it needs to be completely imageless. And so what would be a good process for, we could just go, I could just like undelete the things that we had as the purpose statements for one thing. We had images, some of them were more about like public space and parks. I didn't feel like they were for private development, but some of them were more private development, or they could be photos instead of diagrams. If we were framed as, here's an example, as opposed to this is what we're looking for. You know, so people could do something like that or not, but it gives them more sense of what we're even talking about. I hear that.
So my suggestion would be, if we take the version before that the individual people review the purpose and the intents, edit them as they see fit. We come back at a group meeting and say, here's what we think these sections should or shouldn't look like. Then we incorporate or delete as we see fit. And as far as I think the idea of photographs is a very good idea. You know, at least I think that going along with what Eric said, it makes the read a little easier. You know, they won't get tired of it and put it down and say, okay, I've read enough. There's something that breaks their consciousness and says, oh, let me look at this image for a minute. That's why I think they're good.
I mean, I can tell you as an architect, I go into a community, I have to design a project there. I'm gonna look at what are the requirements, what are the guidelines, what are the things, and, you know, I'm gonna open this up and I'm like, geez. It's like, yeah, really? All this stuff in here. I mean, it's a lot
How
of,
would you,
it takes time.
how would you adjust it to make it?
I have to go through it like undisturbed time and really read through the whole thing and see how we can, and I just haven't had the time and I apologize. And also I had put together a whole bunch of things, but when I did that, this was sometime last year. My computer in the meantime crashed and I lost a lot of stuff. So I'm having a hard time finding these things.
Oh, dear.
My water bottle leaked into the side of my computer and literally fried the whole thing. It was totally unsalvageable. So I was only able to recover partial stuff. So that's why I haven't been able to send those things to you. I found one thing, but it was about complete street, which is not what we're talking about.
I agree with you that this has gotten so bullety that it's just too dense.
Yeah, it's,
And there's probably more bullets than we need.
yes,
I mean, when there's that many bullets, there's too many bullets.
right.
For what it's worth, we had more.
It's
bullets.
like-
It's just,
It's
you know,
like the smorgasbord of the.
the half we took out, we're
And
going to take out.
so much stuff you don't even
These
wanna
are all the
look
ones
at
that we
the
allowed to
something.
stay though. I mean, we went through it once and these are the ones that we left.
Clarify the process, I did multiple things. I think I deleted too many purpose statements and pictures, but the other thing that I did was try to consolidate the bullets into fewer categories, because we had like 17 categories before, so just, and they seem duplicated. And then
Well,
delete the
that's
bullets.
17 bullets right there.
But you saved all of the bullets.
Yeah, I mean,
It's different.
save the ones that we voted on, because we went through this
Yeah, we
line by
did go
line.
through it. We did vote for it.
And I deleted some that felt, once you start consolidating
I'm
this.
sorry.
I have not read it at all. I was looking at
So what,
pedestrian amenities and there's 20 bullets.
So they could be,
20 bullets.
I mean, honestly, a lot of them are just, don't put a piece of furniture in the middle of the sidewalk, like it's not,
Anyway.
so we could,
Maybe we should read it again and then edit it.
Yeah.
Again, cross off what you don't think, have that discussion again. I think it should take 3 years to do this. but-
okay, so then what I could do is, because I have, here's the old version right here.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So I can restore the purpose
Still
statements.
wonderful.
Then why don't you send something around to us so we can all.
And I could put all the pictures back too. People could contribute pictures. And I think in the bullet points, maybe there's some further consolidation.
Maybe we should take it one step further. We should say something like, let's get to the point where there's no more than 12 bullets in any one category.
Okay.
So everyone looks at it, reviews it, and then maybe combines things that they think need to combine. Or we say, no more than 12 bullets per section.
Is that even too many? That's 12.
I don't know. Not too many?
That feels like too many.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
That's a lot.
that was a lot.
I mean, how many sections are there? 6, 7? There's like 80 bullets.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Okay. So how many do you think would be reasonable? You gotta-
I don't think we can, it's not by number. Well,
No,
You'll
but we
find
gotta
it-
have something to shoot for, otherwise
Yeah.
we're all gonna be doing different.
I mean, think how many things you can remember in your head when you go through, you read this, like, okay, I gotta remember, as a designer, I have to remember, duck. You won't even be able to remember everything. You'd have to like,
Meaningful reduction.
I agree, but again, these aren't made up, these are out of somebody else's books.
I know.
These are existing codes.
But some of them are, one from this one from this one from that one. And we have all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Some of them.
All right, well, let's table that for 1 second, because the other part of the process is we want this to be enforceable. And I think we've come to the conclusion that it needs to be referenced in the zoning code to be enforceable. That's your opinion, right?
Have them at least read it.
To say that in the site plan review, so like we had, David actually gave us our own site plan review, or was that Andrea?
Yeah.
We have the site plan review in this blue sheet of paper. On the last 2 pages of the blue sheet of paper, just as a reminder, our approval guidelines. So we had initially thought that these approval guidelines would give us the power to we could use the design guidelines as an articulation of these approval guidelines. So, and maybe we can, but that's too indirect. So the suggestion was to add, to perhaps, like one thought is if you have approval guidelines, which is section E, there's 11 things, not including the new one that they suggested. We could add an additional one that says, and comply with the design guidelines.
I don't like the word comply.
Or and whatever, but like, this is where we would reference it to tie it into this.
This is our existing
Parking loading. Number
guidelines.
12 is compliance with parking loading dimensional performance standards and all other sections of this ordinance. You could just put a phrase in there.
Compliance with parking, loading, dimensional performance standards. Well, those are parts of the ordinance already. The trick is that the design guidelines is a separate we wouldn't be putting the
Here you
design
go.
guidelines.
Here's an example. So this is Amherst has now done a set of design guidelines. You would think Amherst was the size of New York City, the way they put this together. And it's Dodson Flinker that did it. But something like this is very simple, very effective. You can either just look at the picture, I get it. If you need more information, you read the headlines at the top of each section. But if you need more than that, you read the bottom thing.
Yeah.
And that's 1 page.
You could steal that.
Yeah.
You can just take it.
I don't think Dodson Flinker would be
Well,
too
that's
happy.
too bad. It's a public document. It's not theirs. It doesn't belong to them.
But no, to take inspiration from that kind of thing, we could very simply get this down.
Well, they have a lot of bullets in here too. It's just.
No,
that the
I know,
bullets are
but
broken up.
it's a layered reading
Yeah.
that you can look at it like someone because you're going to have developers looking at this, you're going to have architects looking at this, you're going to have owners looking at this, and they're going to read different levels of, they're going to.
We stole everybody else's stuff.
We can totally take that.
What did you say?
All got
Stole
credit
everywhere.
for what they did.
Anyway,
Can we,
yeah, there's a lot.
Feel anything.
I think
I mean, this is like,
the point I'm trying to make is
it's like a.
we could go on forever on this
We don't
document.
want to.
I think we should be able to continue working on this. Whenever we have a good idea, we should be able to change it. But in the meantime, even this is good. It's better than what's in there now,
Yeah.
right? It's because it's how many pages of ideas we think are good that are not currently represented. So if a project comes to us tomorrow, we don't have the benefit of this really. We only have the benefit of these 12 things that don't really address these types of things. So we should, I would suggest that we parallel track it. We continue forever, as long as we feel like it, working on this document. But we also tie it into the zoning soon, so that whatever the latest and greatest version of this is enforceable in the zoning for when projects come up. And then we can do, 1 month, we could say, hey, let's get more of those types of
If we
annotated
want to
images.
bring a zoning change to the city council, they'll want to see our design guidelines.
Yeah, and we need, I mean, there needs to be an opportunity for the public. We could have an official, I mean, these are all public meetings when we talk about this, but we could signal this is something we're working on.
I mean,
That's gonna take a long time to get through that process already.
I have InDesign, I have Adobe Creative Suite. I could take that and do these nice graphics,
think
just
that'd be
like
wonderful.
this, to make it more legible very easily.
Nominate you to do
Yeah,
that.
please.
And no, but wait, I didn't finish. There's a but. I'm still
can't be-
working part-time, full-time, I mean.
It'll take us
And-
2 years.
Well, I mean, I gotta find I still got a house I'm trying to finish. Plus I've been dealing with health challenges, so it's like,
Well, let me
when
ask
am I
you-
gonna do
Let me
this?
ask you this, Erica.
So,
If we asked the city council to add something in our site plan review that references the design guidelines, and they said, okay, well, what are these design guidelines? And we showed them this. What you're talking about is not going to deviate from this significantly in its content. It's just going to make it look better. So we would have the freedom to do that. We're just making this easier to read, but we're not changing the substance of
Yeah, I
it.
agree with that.
So
Well, we may thin it out, Jeff.
well, then it out's less regulated. So I think
Yeah.
I would argue that adding regulations is more controversial and needs more vetting than.
Yeah.
And maybe, I guess taking regulations out also needs vetting, but these are already subjective in many ways.
Yeah, so I think we should keep working on it before we get.
But we need to
Yeah,
make sure
we're
that it's
not-
okay
we're
for us
not
to
ready.
to get it approved and be able to keep working on it.
You have a deadline.
Maybe the question, Ella, is, does there have to be a big complicated, like, if we want to modify our design guidelines, what's they've been referenced in this document in zoning? Every time thereafter, do we have to have some complicated process with public hearings and council approvals? Or can we always continue to improve this over time as long as we're not completely overhauling it?
Yeah, I asked Attorney Quinn that question, our city council, and he said we do not need to have a public hearing process every time we change the design guidelines. My professional opinion would be that as long as the intent of the guidelines don't change, like there is some
Right.
gray area there,
Yeah.
you know, and I would really want to bring it back to city council if there's a substantial change, but we do have in writing that council opinion.
Okay.
I just, if I may add, I think one helpful thing to do when reviewing this, and like the next version, is certainly designers and architects and our owners are gonna look at it, but you all are going to be responsible for implementing it. So do you understand every bullet? And can you implement every bullet if an applicant comes before you? And if you
excellent
can't,
point.
or if you think it's flimsy, eliminate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think we're gonna try. My suggestion was something like, in the code, we say, review design guidelines and provide a narrative how your project's going to comply with each category in the design guidelines. And that's really what we want. We want to look at it and say, yep, I can do the lighting because I'm going to provide this. I can do the fascia because I'm going to use stone. That's what we're trying to get to,
I think
right?
that's precedented.
So
Yeah.
that's how I would leave it, is that to get in the code. And then I wouldn't, because again, we can't make them use red brick.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be.
No, we can't. If they come in and show us a design that's brick, and we say, we really don't like, glazed brick, really, we say you can't use glazed brick.
But
We could say they don't, it doesn't really meet our guidelines, we could kind of encourage them not to go that way, but we can't say no,
But we,
but I understand.
we can control materials to some
Very
degree.
expensive to do brick. You can't even find masons to lay brick these days. You're laughing, but I'm telling
I'm not
you,
laughing.
it's a dying breed. Brick is very costly, which is why you only see it in public buildings or institutional buildings. It's very costly. Even the library, we couldn't afford to put brick on the whole thing.
So what is what do we want what do we want the process to be to get the guidelines in the zoning? We could,
Well, we have to get consensus among us. I think it's ready to go to council. And I don't get the sense that we have that. So I guess the first thing we need to do is get this to a point where everyone on the committee can support us showing it to the council. And once we get there, then we can just say to the council, we would like this language added under this site plan review that references these design.
okay, so you want to get this another step further
I think
before,
we have to because we don't have consensus.
yeah, okay. And it's gonna always be a draft or a working document,
Working document,
but it's not close enough to be in that version one.
that's the impression I get.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
I also think it's fine.
But that's okay. We need to.
I mean, it can always be better. I like the.
Yeah, it can always be better.
Why don't we just do one more review?
Always, can always be better.
And you're gonna add back some stuff. We'll do one more review and we'll see if it's.
And I think we do need to set some kind of goals. In other words, if you think it's too many bullets, then we really should say
Or, I mean,
between,
layout will
6
help
to
a
8.
lot. I mean, the kinds of things that she's showing visually, you can put a lot more bullets in if you have pictures and other stuff. If all you're looking at is bullets, it's like, that's a shitload of
Yeah.
bullets.
it's hard to
Look at
find.
this line, look at,
No,
look at that.
they're beautiful, but it's hard to find images online.
Yeah.
That fit to these things. You know, they just, you can't get these images. These,
Yes, you can, actually.
no, you
Right there.
can't because they don't know that they're pictures unless it's a Word document. You can't copy the
Oh, I
picture.
see what you're saying.
So you can't get those pictures. I tried, believe me, I tried very hard.
Mm,
But then when you
What you have to do is you have to
Screen grab, yeah.
drop it into
Yeah.
a Word document and then save it.
I know, that's
Yeah.
like,
It's a
trying to get it
long
nice and
time.
clean and concise.
It's very laborious.
So that's,
A lot of
You can-
codes
you
can
can
do
do
it. I've
it.
done it many times. You take a PDF, put it in the cloud into AI and
and
have it just.
my AI said it couldn't see it. It couldn't tell what the picture was. It knew it was an
You need
image.
to use a better
It
model.
says, I guess so. So it knew it was an
Don't use
image,
AI.
but it didn't know what the image was.
But like,
Do an
you
image search.
can,
I did.
so anyway, that's
Anyway,
the process for making it.
Anyway,
I would
this is
argue,
a beautiful piece of work. Kudos to Dotson Flinker. We're not Amherst, we can't afford that.
but we can,
We don't have this even same population. And-
setting aside the design of the document, sounds like we want to get the content, the raw, just
Yeah.
text content a step better. So we're going to put the intent statements back in. We're going to work on winnowing down the number of bullets where we can. As Ella suggested, if we actually don't really even know what something means, we can get those out too. And then that might be something we can say, it represents our intent to the council. We're going to continue making this easier to read, not change the rules 180 degrees, just lay it out in an even better way. And we're going to continue to do that over time, but it's not going to deviate substantially from the content and intent you see here. If we feel like we can, with a straight face, show them we have that document ready, then we're ready to proceed with putting it in the zoning. Then my only suggestion would be, if we think we're on the brink of having that anyway, it takes several months to get to city council. We could begin the process. We can always stop the process halfway if we don't feel like we're there, but we need several meetings to discuss it, to act on it, to have a public hearing. We could begin that sooner than later as well.
Well, for beginning the process.
So maybe next time
There's definitely a way to simplify this.
yeah, I know, we settled that. The next time, what we could do, Ella, is have what would it look like? What would we need to do to the zoning code to tie this in? What do we think? What do you think is the proper way to do that?
Okay.
And then that can be discussed. And then maybe then or at a future meeting, it becomes an action item to recommend that to council, and then we have the hearings and all that. And I think, Erica, having examples of like the direction we want to take it is really helpful to them too, so they can see what we're talking about, but I don't think we have to do it yet.
Mhm.
Does that make sense, everybody?
Perfect.
All right. So I guess to close one, I can go back and, because I have the history of the document, go back to the version that has those intent statements. And then we can distribute that.
Great.
People can look at that.
How much Amherst paid to have this done?
All right, next item. Planning board meeting schedule. So we were asked, told,
Not to have a third one.
the third Wednesday meeting is not not approved because it overlaps with other meetings. There's conflict every single day, but that conflict is not acceptable. So we aren't gonna, I think we're not gonna have that next meeting this month. We should talk about if we want to continue to try to find a second meeting time or not, or wait till after summer.
Was Wednesday the problem?
Was that specific Wednesday overlap?
Third Wednesday of the month of city council.
Right.
And the only reason we did that is we wanted to space it out. I mean, we don't, I have no objection to meeting the next week or even,
But the question would be like that Thursday instead of that Wednesday.
I can't do the third.
Yeah, that whole week, that was the only day that, and I think that Sarah had to like skip her book club, and everyone was making sacrifices to.
George had.
Yeah. So do we think we have enough activity to justify 2 meetings a month going forward? The initial project was to work on the design guidelines, which we're still working on.
I think we should try and schedule a second meeting a month. If we don't need to meet, we don't need to meet. But to have that day in everybody's calendar and have that room booked already, things like that, I think it's much better than trying to do an ad hoc meeting.
So we could decide at the first meeting if we need the second meeting.
Yeah. But have that in the books and on people's calendars so they know it's there. I just think it's better. Plus,
Well, one thing that we found is that
But I thought we couldn't find a date.
we could just accept that it's not going to be a perfect date. I think one of the frustrations I have is that it takes like 4 months to do something, like, because we were tied by, it's the number of meetings dictates how long you can go from an idea to an actual change.
Right.
So we now have, if we have 1 meeting a month, the fastest we can go is 4 months. We can double that speed,
yeah,
except to the extent that we're beholden to EDC and the council at certain intervals.
And staff capacity, like,
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that point, but I'm not sure I can actually prepare these things within the 2 week.
In a 2 week period, yeah. Okay, makes sense. And one of the things we're trying to do was to have different types of agendas each time, so it wasn't.
Oh, that's
Right,
true,
so
right?
that-
So maybe the zoning would be 4 weeks from now. Yeah.
That would be an option I totally understand that.
Yeah, and I think the once a month for projects coming through is fine. Yeah.
Even for like site plan
Yeah,
review.
regular-
We don't need
meeting.
to start extending that schedule and giving people more, it just
No.
gets too
we,
complicated.
we need the second meeting.
Especially for the
all
public
of
to
us.
comment, it's just gets.
Well, that was the whole intent. That's why we thought it was okay to have the
Right.
conflict, because it was supposed to be a working meeting. We weren't going to put really important
Right.
stuff then,
Exactly.
but that wasn't.
That's not what
It wasn't how people interpreted it.
Right, exactly.
Well, we had a meeting that actually had a zoning issue on it that they, it got complicated.
We complicated it too.
Yeah.
We're guilty.
Okay, fair enough.
So are we just not scheduling for this month, or do we want to talk about scheduling it for another one?
We could, is it too late to schedule one for this month?
No, it's not too late.
Is there anything that you know of coming down the pipeline that needs our?
There are no projects, there are no
Yeah,
active
right.
applications.
We can do any day but Thursday, third week.
We don't have the rest of the board here to ask them what their availability is.
Yes, and maybe it's not productive.
My Wednesdays have started to get complicated too.
With two of the regular board members not here, it's kind of hard.
Missing 3.
Can't communicate with me.
We can about logistics. I think.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, that's true.
So. Let's 4 of us figure out this day that week that works and just send out an email to the others.
And the agenda would be this next iteration of design guideline work.
Probably.
Yeah.
If we limit it to that, it seems like we can. Maybe we can't do the Wednesday, but
Stay away from the Wednesday, you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
I'm gonna have a ton of travel for the next 3 months, just FYI. I'll try to join remotely when I can, but I let George know that as well. I'm gonna miss the June meeting. And I'll be remote on the July meeting. But that doesn't have to.
Talk about a regular meeting or?
Regular meeting, I guess, yeah. But, I mean, that's why we have alternates and George knows how to be chair, so. um, Do we want to look at calendars right now and try to find?
Like I said, any day other than Thursday, in the third week, I'll make it work for me. It wasn't master of the law.
You're like Can you use a doodle poll for this sort of thing? Are we allowed to? That's not like a open meeting violation.
Right, yeah.
I feel bad about trying to schedule this when we have three people that.
Sure.
That aren't here. but
So, yeah.
fine. If we could attempt anyway, and maybe Ellie,
Let's do that.
we just only pick days where a room is available.
Okay. Including fire station?
Yeah, that's fine. That should be like a standard.
But maybe we can find a new permanent second meeting.
That way, you know, first meeting is here, second meeting is there.
Yeah. So it's not just a one-off, it's a potential permanent. Ideally, it's 2 weeks from now, but we'll see what we can do. And I think if there's some, if we're hoping for a quick turnaround, we as board members can support you and do homework also.
Absolutely.
Or we won't make it so that it's something that needs a ton of your time.
Tell me where to look for something or give me something to dig up. You know, I'm glad to help out any way I can.
Okay, so can you help us?
Yeah, I can send a doodle poll, yeah.
Thank you. Last item, announcement of May 19th, public event hosted by the Open Space Task Force regarding the master plan chapters update and priority conservation area. That was shared, we have printouts of that. So there's a public meeting. Ellie, is there anything you want to say about that? If you're going to be there.
So yeah, it's Tuesday, May
Great
19th.
speakers.
Sorry?
Great speakers.
Great. George, our vice chair.
And you.
Thanks. So it's Tuesday, May 19th. Public meeting hosted by the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, which is a city committee, volunteers and staff. Mostly about the open space task force work on map that you reviewed 2 meetings ago. Mapping priority conservation areas. But Vice Chair Kansas and I will be presenting the master plan updated chapters and successes that the city and the community has had in implementing the master plan.
How long is that going to go?
Commitment. It starts at 6. There's gonna be food as well.
Food.
Yeah.
And I can just say that one of my jobs was to George briefed the council, as you all know, on the master plan. So and Ella met with the mayor just to make sure she was aware of the updates too. So that was just to get the word out on that. Okay, so we'll figure out when our next meeting is and keep you posted. Look out for a doodle poll on that. Get some homework on design guidelines. See you next time.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, that senior project that we had a site plan review on. Remember that guy came through and said